Hey guys, welcome back to Sports Betting Truth. Another college football video this week. I'm going to get right into the purpose of these weekly videos, and that is the week. I guess I don't even know what week we're on. I mean, it depends on when you decide the college football season started. I mean, technically it was like September 5th, but some people say it wasn't until the bigger conferences started playing. I don't know. Week 14, I guess, is what I have it as in the title, so let's just go with that. But I'm going to open up my betting files here. I don't open them until I need them. That way I don't drain resources on my computer, so the frame rate can stay smooth. You know, because the laptop I run this off of is not like what you considered a performance laptop. One day when I actually set up a actual studio and everything, I'll have a powerful desktop to do all this, and it won't matter. But until then, I have to just open and close files as I need them. So I'm going to briefly go over last week's results. Real quick, it wasn't a good week. I have fallen further into the hole this year, but I'm not surprised. If you watch my videos leading up to the season, I told you I didn't see how it'd be possible to come up with an approach this year that would be profitable. I knew that going into the year is going to be very difficult, and I'm honestly surprised I'm only down 3 or 4 units on the season, however much I am, because I just don't see how anybody could create a model that could succeed in this climate that we have this year. Like I said, the biggest thing all along has been and always will be the lack of non-conference games. That basically makes any model impossible to run. But anyway, I have the file open, so let me switch over to that. All right, so let me start the last week's games. It was week 8, and the weeks in this file is how many weeks in a row the model has been consistent. I haven't changed it for 8 weeks, so there you go. So another week of red. The nickel continues to be my best performing metrics across the board, spread and money lines. And then when we look at the entire season, I think combo is the best metric overall on standard. Yes, it is. So anyway, the keys are pretty much the same from last week. The ATS keys have not changed at all. It's still ATM, penny, nickel. And on the season, that is plus 8.7 units, 23% ROI, but it went 0-3 last week. As you can see, the minus 330 right there. And then the moneyline keys also pretty much the same. The only difference is that dime was dropped, and it's just nickel quarter now. And when I run that, what do we get? Yep, like I said, we get, whoops, I forgot to change this metric right here. Let me do that. So the keys this week for moneyline are going to be this one right here, nickel and quarter, plus 1337 for you internet people out there. 13.37 units on the season. Last week it was plus 1.4 if I used the same metrics, but I didn't. That's why when I show you last week's results, that moneyline plays were a loser. All right, let me switch over to that file real quick. And I could show you how things were last week exactly, as well as show you this week's plays. The benefit of those of you who don't watch this live is that you can skip along while I'm loading these things. You have the advantage other people have to sit through this. All right, file is open. Let me make sure it's switched over. Yes, it is. All right, so here we go. Plays last week, 0-3 against the spread and 3 games canceled. So, of course, the games that were not canceled were the losers. And then 2-2 on the money line, but it was a wash. Or 2-3, my bad. 2-3, so no profit there either. So, overall, minus 2.55. So, now I'm down 3.48 units on the year. So, if I'm going to have a 4th year of profitability in a row, I need to turn it around quickly. But that's the problem. It's just been a difficult year. In a normal year, I'd be like, 3.48 units, not that hard to make up. But in a season like this, that seems like a huge undertaking to be able to wipe that out. So I already ran the model for this week, so go ahead and look at the plays. We got, here they are. UNLV plus 28, Ohio State minus 23.5, Akron minus 2.5. They are playing in the Toilet Bowl this weekend against Bowling Green. Might be the worst matchup on paper of the year, but I have Akron. Auburn +7 against A&M. I think they went out right, but they aren't a money line play. San Diego State -7.5. Troy -4.5. So 6 spread plays, and we got 3 money line plays. UL Lafayette, New Mexico, and Troy. So I don't know how many units I'm going to risk. I'm going to keep doing points. I'll do 0.75 this week. How's that? I know I said that I was going to try to like normalize my past results, but I haven't gotten around to that yet. And then 1.45. All right, so there we go. Total units risk for the week is 7.45. So 7.45 units on the week being risked. And those are the plays. Not a lot of interesting matchups this week. I looked at the schedule, and I mean, we have Texas A&M, Auburn, Indiana, Wisconsin, and then a couple mid-major games like UL Lafayette, Appalachian State, Liberty, Coastal Carolina. But for the most part, just not a lot of good matchups this week. So those are the plays this week for college football. I'll post that on my Twitter as well. But that wraps up the picks portion of the stream. And now I'm going to go into commentary real quick before shifting the focus back into betting. All right, so the thing about college football is that even though there's some interesting developments happening, at first I want to talk about bowl games and why I think they are completely pointless this year. Completely pointless. I speak of this from a former player. I know what bowl games are. I don't think the average person quite understands what a bowl game entails. It's not just a game. It's not just a game. It is a reward for the players. And by that, I mean it's pretty much a vacation for the players to another destination where they can enjoy themselves, have a good time for a week, and then they go play a game at the end. And I think that's why motivation is such a big factor when it comes to bowl games. It's because you got to remember there's so many distractions during bowl week. Like for the Rose Bowl, we went to Los Angeles. We were there for 10 days. 10 days. We went to Disneyland. We went to Lowry's. We went to a comedy club. We went to a bowling alley. We went to a Clippers game. Like, we did all these team activities, right? And that's the thing. It's very easily to be distracted, not to mention, like, all the free time we had, non-team activities where people still went out and did stuff on their own. Lots of distractions, right? And that's why I think bowl games, motivation's a big deal, because usually the team that's less distracted during the week is going to win. So, aka the team that's more motivated. But here's the deal with bowl games this year. What is the point? With all the COVID restrictions, say we went to the Rose Bowl during COVID era, we would have never gone to Disneyland. We wouldn't have gone to Lowry's or the Comedy Club or the Clippers game. We wouldn't have done any of that. So what would we do? Would we just sit in a hotel room for 10 days? What would we have done? We weren't. All the bars and restaurants and everything were closed. Besides practice and sit in your hotel room, what else is there to do during bowl week? Like when we went to the Poinsettia Bowl in San Diego, we went to the zoo, we went to the go-kart track, we went to the USS Midway, SeaWorld. I mean, what would we have done in San Diego for the Poinsettia Bowl? Sit in our hotel room all day? And even the Fiesta Bowl, we didn't have a lot of planned team activities compared to the other two bowls, but we went to Fogo de Chao one night, and the thing is, we might not have had a lot of planned team activities, but we had a lot of free time. So, like, me and some other guys went to the casino one night. We went to the mall one night. We went to a Suns game one night. So, like, we did a lot of outside team activities. So, in COVID era bowl games, what are these guys going to do? There's no way they're going to go out to a bowl site for a whole week and stay there, because there's no point, because all you're going to do is sit in your hotel room. So I'm guessing that the teams will just treat it like a normal game week and practice at home and then fly out to the bowl site the day before and then just treat it like a normal game. But here's the deal with bowls. The whole point of bowls is, yes, to reward players, but also notice how most bowl games are in warm weather climates. Bowls exist to attract fans from colder climates to go travel to their location and spend money in their economy, spend money on hotel rooms, spend money on local restaurants, spend money on tickets to the game. None of that's going to be happening this year either, except for maybe the bowl games in Florida. But, like, There's no way these bowl games are going to make any money this year, and the local economies aren't going to benefit from bowl games this year. So honestly, what's the point? What's the point? I guess you're going to just have to treat them like a regular season non-conference game, I'm guessing. The only bowl games that I see that have a point of existing are the playoffs, because at least there's something riding on those games. But everything else, it's like, it's not going to be a destination for fans. It's not going to be a reward for the players. So it's just going to be another non-conference game at the end of the season. So I just don't see the point. And I already know that bowl games are starting to cancel, like the Pinstripe Bowl. I would not be surprised if more cancel, because they're just not economically viable. They're not economically viable. They're not going to make up enough money in ticket sales and money spent on the local economy to justify their existence, especially the lower tier bowl games. So anyway, that's my rant on bowl games. I just don't see the point this year. And honestly, I don't see a team doing the normal bowl week experience and going out to the site for a week and practicing and enjoying the city and everything and then playing a game. I don't see that happening, because it's just, it'll be boring. If you're just going to sit in your hotel room all day, why not just stay home, right? Anyway, that's my rant on bowl games this year. I don't see the point. So moving on to the next topic, hotly discussed subject over the weekend, and that was the Vanderbilt kicking situation and playing Sarah Fuller. And I'm going to chime in on this. Like, I feel like if we had a real sports media in this country, they would ask the questions that need to be asked. So I will say it right now. There is no way, and I have nothing against Sarah Fuller at all. And honestly, she might be a victim here. She might be an unwitting pawn of a situation that Vanderbilt has really tried to exploit for their own PR gains, right? She just might be a unwitting player along this. I don't know, but there is no way she was the best option at kicker for Vanderbilt this past weekend. No way. No way. And because of that, I 100% believe it was a publicity stunt. Listen to me here. I played football at TCU. At the beginning of every season, they had walk-on tryouts. You know how many kickers we would have come in that wanted to try out to be a kicker or punter? Oh man, it was dozens. I swear at least one year there's maybe 75 of them. 75. And it was just ridiculous. And, you know, it was like, how are they going to pick the best out of 75, right? It was hard. I remember like one day after practice on the game field, it was a Sunday night, and they were all, you know, kicking for our special teams coach, Coach Sharp, you know. But I was like, I think they maybe kept 5. But here's the deal. A lot of people want to walk on as a kicker or punter because they think it'll be an easy way to get on the team. Not at TCU. At TCU, if you were not on the depth chart as a kicker, you were playing scout team. You still had to do all the off-season workouts and all that, so you still had to pay your dues. It's not like you just walk on and just sit on the sideline and kick all day during practice. No, you had to earn your way if you're a kicker. But there is no way that Sarah Fuller is the best option at kicker because of that. Are you telling me, I don't care how that bad of a team Vanderbilt is, are you telling me that they had no prospective walk-on kickers that wanted to be a kicker that had a better leg, that were high school kickers or soccer players? Are you telling me that no one wanted to try out as walk-on kicker, so we had to go to the women's soccer team to find one? There is no way. Like just walk-on kickers, prospective walk-on kickers were a dime a dozen at TCU, and we were a good team, and maybe we had more than the average team because we were good. We were coming off good seasons, expected to have good seasons. People wanted to be a part of that. I get it, but you still... Are you telling me that Vanderbilt had none? None? Total publicity stunt. Now, let me tell you this. Like I said, she might have been an unwitting player in all this, but I read a story. I don't know if it's true or not, but I was reading around, trying to find some accounts for people in the know inside the Vanderbilt locker room. And the thing is I read a story that she gave a speech at halftime. And when I read that, I cringed. I was like, oh man, there's no way. There's no way. Oh, if I was a player and some person who had literally been on the team for a day or two wanted to give a halftime speech, you know how mad I would be? Because I don't think people realize just how much work you have to put in as a college football player. I mean, you're talking about a locker room of guys who have, put in all the practices and training time and off-season workouts and everything, and then someone just joins a team like during the week and wants to give a speech. No, I really hope for her sake and for the team's sake that did not happen. Because let me tell you a personal story. So at TCU, we got to dress out for games, right? Even if you weren't on the depth chart, you still got to dress out for home games. But if you were not on the depth chart, you had to earn it. So the day before our games, you had to do something called MTXEs, which is like a series of really tough, workouts that you had to do just to kind of like what Coach Summer, our strength coach, said, to earn your way onto the sideline, right? So on Fridays, we had to do MTXEs, and they were pretty hard. And I remember my first year, it was the second MTXE of the year. So our second home game of the year, we were about to play Stanford the next day, and we were doing MTXEs. And one of the things about MTXEs is that if we didn't do it good enough, so if like we didn't beat the time, or if we didn't do it good enough according to the coaches, we had to do extra at the end, right? So because we had a bunch of guys the night before decide to go out and party, and they're all hungover on a Friday for MTXE, we didn't come close. And we had guys just like who couldn't do it. They were puking and everything. And I was mad because, we had to do extra. And so I started to call these guys out and yell at them. And keep in mind, like, I would have never done this if it was mostly like starters and stuff. But because it was mostly like walk-ons like me and like true freshmen who are redshirting, I figured, hey, I could step up here and be a guy to like get onto everyone's case. That's not how it works. You cannot be that kind of guy who's like a motivator until you've earned it. Like, people have to respect you to be a motivator. Like in high school, I was a very vocal guy because I had earned my way. People respected me. I was a hard worker. I had proved myself over the years, so people like respected me and would respect me if I was yelling at them, hey, like, pick it up, guys. We got to do better than this. But, I was still a pretty new guy at TCU at the time. A bunch of these freshmen didn't really know me that well, and there's still a lot of guys doing MTXE who had been there longer than me. And, I was yelling at these guys. I was calling them out and stuff, and people just didn't want to hear it. It's not that I was wrong. It's not that I was wrong to call these guys out. It's just I hadn't earned my way yet to be able to be that guy. And one of the guys who had a problem with me doing it was a walk-on fullback named Ryan Hightower. He was a pretty big, strong guy, walk-on fullback, and he started tearing into me. He started pushing me. He wanted to fight me right then and there. It was bad. He was like, you have no right to, and he was right. He was totally right. Like, who the hell was I to come out and try to, like, be that guy? And I wasn't even doing that well in the MTXE myself, and that was kind of the crux of his argument, is that I was yelling at these guys when I myself was, not... It would be one thing if I was yelling at these guys if I was, like, leading the way and finishing first and all the things we had to do, but I was kind of, like, middle of the pack, and so Ryan Hightower, he had a problem, and he was totally right. He was well within his right to try to start a fight with me there. And here's the thing. I think the strength coaches agreed with him because they didn't try to break it up. I would have got my ass kicked by Ryan Hightower if other people did not get in the way. And the strength coaches just kind of like turned a blind eye to it because I believe I deserved to get my ass kicked. But anyway, to tie this all into Sarah Fuller, if she got up there and gave a halftime speech, my reaction, if I was a player in the locker room who had been with the program, done off-season workouts and two-a-days and put in all that time, I would be like, who the hell does this person think she is? And the fact that if that did happen and the coaches let it happen, oh, man. But yeah, in my opinion, total publicity stunt. Vanderbilt should be ashamed of themselves. There is no way, nothing, like I said, nothing against Sarah Fuller. This commentary is not me ripping on her personally, but she's being used here by Vanderbilt. She's being used. And I just refuse to believe she is the best option at kicker from my experiences as a player, knowing how many damn people want to walk on as a kicker. And I guarantee you, anybody else, at least, I don't know if that's the case at other schools, but I guarantee you it's the case at big state schools. Anybody else who's played college football can attest to you. There are a crap load of people that try to walk on as a kicker. And a lot of them are pretty good. I remember watching them. I remember watching these walk-on kickers have their, tryouts, because I feel like I don't think any of these walk-on kickers actually made the team that weren't already there in the summer. But I remember some of them were actually pretty good, a lot better than what a female kicker could accomplish. So I just find it hard to believe. Sorry, Vanderbilt, not buying it. Anyway, yeah, this college football season has been a beating. I've been having a good time working on my college basketball model, and then to get my picks in this week, I had to switch back to college football mode. It's just not fun. Like I said before the season started, doing the college football preview streams on my phone when I was in South Dakota, I just don't see how a model can work with the way college football is structured this year. I don't. It's a square peg round hole situation with the lack of non-conference games, the players having to sit out, and games being canceled, games being rescheduled. It's a circus. And there's just too many variables in play this season that make a predictive model, especially the way I have mine set up, to work. And that's just the fact of the season. So it's kind of been a beating. And honestly, I'm ready for the season to be over with. I would never say that in the past. I would never say that in the past where I want the season to be over with, but it's just becoming a chore at this point. A chore. The games don't feel important. The games are canceled on a whim. Everything is too arbitrary. There are no non-conference games. It's just like, you know what I heard this analogy today. I'm going to use it for my own channel. This college football season feels like the same. You know how all these, baseball, for example, they did all these cardboard cutout fans, or college game day during the virtual signs and all that, like virtual fan. That's what this college football season sounds like. It's like the virtual fan of a football season. They're trying to make it feel like the real deal, but it's not. It just feels pathetic, and like that's what I feel about the cardboard cutout fans and the virtual game day signs and everything. I just feel like it's cheesy and lame, and it doesn't come close to being a good substitute for the real thing. It's this college football season is the tofu turkey of Thanksgiving turkeys. It tries to substitute the real thing. It tries to act like it's the real thing, but it's not. It doesn't even come close. So I'm honestly ready for the season to be over with. It's just a chore at this point. Yep. What's my opinion on why the playoff system has never gone up to 8 or 16 teams? Money and control. I think it's more about control than money. In my opinion, this is why a playoff system was instituted in the first place. And I will take this to my grave. It is because us, the TCU teams I played on, finished third in the BCS rankings 2 straight years. We are one team away from going to the national title game. And the people who ran the BCS were probably terrified of that notion, because for them it's more about control and power over the process than it is money. A college football playoff would make loads more money than the BCS did, or a 4-team playoff would. But here's the deal. You'd have to split that money more ways, when you only have to split the money 2 ways or 4 ways. You would prefer that if you're one of the beneficiaries of that money over a bigger pot, but also having it be split more. And that's why the playoff has not been expanded. And I think the only reason the playoff came out in the first place is because they wanted to have a committee to block a outsider team like my TCU team or those Boise State teams or the UCF teams from getting into the playoff, because it very well could have happened in 2009 if Texas didn't get that second added onto the clock in the Big 12 championship game. There's a good chance we would have been the team in the national championship game that year. And so they wanted to avoid that scenario, and that's why a playoff exists. Control over the process. And we're not going to see an 8 or 16 team playoff, because that would mean having to split the pot more ways and having less control over the process and having these other teams demanding a bigger access to the pie. It's all about control. Anyone who says about money is only partially true. It's about control over the money. Yeah, Shalman R. That's the thing. Here's a question I have about Sarah Fuller. Say she stays on the team. Is she still going to do off-season workouts? Is she still going to have to do the summer workouts? Spring ball, 2-a-days? Like, I could not imagine, like I said, no offense to the girls out there, but I could not imagine the girls doing some of the workouts we had to do. Like the MTXEs. Like, here was a typical MTXE. We had to flip a tractor tire 50 yards, basically across the field. Doesn't seem so hard, right? Yeah, but that was only like one of 7 things we had to do. Then we had to go back and pull like a heavy-ass boat chain across the field, which would just kill your quads. And like, you could only move it like an inch at a time because it was so heavy. You had to pull that all the way across the field. Okay, you're 2 of 7. Then you had to run back. Then you had to push a sled with like 200 pounds added to it. You think your quads were dead from the boat chain? Okay, now you have to go push the sled and kill them even more. And then you had to run back. You're not even halfway done. Now you have to pick up this PVC pipe that is like 10 feet long and filled with water, right? And you can't balance it because as soon as you balance it one way, the water shifts over, and then you have to balance it in like, here's the deal. If either end hit the ground, you had to stop and do 10 burpees. Yeah. So you could not let it hit the ground. So you were just like all over the place, just trying to get this thing to the other sideline without the ends hitting the ground. Okay, you finished that. Now you're halfway done. See, I just don't see how a girl could do that. So either they would have to make it easier for her, or she wouldn't do it, and that would piss off the people who did have to do it. Maybe a girl could keep up with the conditioning, like the sprint workouts. Like, I always said the worst day of our summer workouts is when we had to do 1,610-yard sprints. It doesn't sound that bad, but trust me, it was, because you had to do it outside in the Texas heat at 1 o'clock in the afternoon with the sun beating down on you, 105 degrees in the Texas summer. And you had to get all the sprints under a certain time. And I was a wide receiver, and so I think I had to get them all under like 16 seconds, which is a total pain in the butt, especially if there was a headwind. And I think the kickers were in group 3, so they were like 18 seconds, but still 16 sprints at 18 seconds, even for like a girl that's a soccer player, that's still going to be hard. So yeah, it might have opened doors, but this is just a publicity stunt that I don't think they thought all the way through. Yeah, I agree, Gozarian. Like I said, if I was a player and someone who just joined the team that week, who hadn't done anything, gets up there and gives and here's what I heard the halftime speech entailed. I heard it was something like, "Come on, guys, why am I the only one cheering on the sideline? Why am I the only one trying to motivate?" Oh my God, if that's what if she gave a speech was bad enough, but if that's what the contents of the speech was, oh boy. Like, okay, I'll admit it. At TCU, I was never on the receiving end of a butt kicking. We only lost 3 times the entire time I was there, and all 3 of those losses were, pretty close. And so I was never on the receiving end of a butt kick. I was in high school, though. In high school, we got our butts kicked a lot. And there just becomes a point in a game where you realize your team's getting your butt kicked. Like, yeah, at the beginning of the game and everything, yeah, you want to be all fired up, motivated, but there becomes a point in the game where your team starts to get its butt kicked, and you just start to lose your motivation. And even if as a fan you see this, like say you're watching a college basketball game with fans in the crowd, right? What happens when that team goes cold and the visiting team goes on a run and is up like 15 points? What does the crowd do? They're quiet. They take the crowd out of the game, and that's kind of what happens as a player when you're getting your butt kicked. I only experienced this in high school, but there comes a point where you just, you lose the motivation to be a motivator. And the only way to get that motivation back is for your team to get back in the game. That's how a crowd gets back into the game. And, I was watching that Duke-Michigan State game last night in college basketball, and Michigan State went on a run to get up by like 14 points in the second half. And I said, okay, this game's over because the crowd's not there to get Duke back in the game. If it was a normal Duke home game with a typical Duke home crowd, you would say 14 points early in the second half would never be a big enough lead. You'd be like, this game's not over. The crowd's going to get Duke back in this game. But with no crowd, Duke couldn't get back in the game. They didn't have the motivation. And that's why Sarah Fuller's probably like, why is nobody besides me motivating everybody on the sideline? Because Missouri was kicking their butts and Vanderbilt's been bad all year, so there's probably just nothing to be excited about. So I hope to God that she did not give a halftime speech, and I hope to God that if she did, that was not what it was about. Why am I the only one motivating? Okay, it's because we're 0-7 and we're once again on the lopsided end of a game. Yeah. Thank you for making me the vessel. Yeah, that's not how I see this. I don't see this as like a Jackie Robinson situation, because there is a reason that women don't play sports with men. It's because biologically men have body structures and muscular structures that are different than women, that allow them to be bigger, stronger, and faster. My cousin played Division III college basketball. They were a pretty good Division III team. He made the Sweet 16 his senior year, but their athletic director was very good friends with the Baylor athletic director. So my cousin's D3 basketball team scrimmaged the Baylor women, who are a top women's basketball program. It was bad. My cousin said they weren't keeping score, but it was ugly, to the point where they had to start, like, because it was more of like a favor that they were doing for the Baylor women's program, but it got to a point where, like, they weren't allowed to press, they had to play zone, and like all these other things, and I truly believe that a decent men's high school basketball team would beat the top women's college team, South Carolina, UConn, whoever they are. I firmly believe that, because the size, the speed, the strength, it's all vastly different. Like, I don't think Brittany Griner, who people consider to be the best post player in the WNBA, or Elena Del Don, I don't think either of those guys could bang in the paint with a Division III college basketball team. Like, my cousin's Division III team, they might have been Division III, but they're still decent. They played Baylor men in a game, and they hung with them for a half. They ended up getting blown out in the end just because they don't have the depth, but for a half they were right in the game. And the thing is, my cousin's D3 team had 3 or 4 guys that were 6'8" or taller. How many women's WNBA teams have that? They don't. They might have 1 or 2 players that are that tall, but they might be tall, but tall does not equal ability or strength. A 6'8" male is different than a 6'8" woman. The 6'8" male is going to be able to bang the crap out of them in the paint. And it's not just about height and size either. It's also about speed. Like, my cousin's team had some pretty good guards that could press and steal the ball from you and just play good on-ball defense. So, like I said, there's a reason that women don't play sports with men. There's no rules out there that say women can't play the sports with these men. It's just that they don't have the ability, and it has nothing to do with sexism or misogyny or the patriarchy. It just has to do with biology. Men and women were designed to have different roles. Men were designed to be stronger, so they could do the work and hunt and kill animals and protect the family and build homes. This is millennia of evolution and biology. That's what men were designed to do. Women were designed to be good at other things. They are designed to be nurturing and caring and emotional and supportive and, all the traits you would need to raise children. That's just biology, guys. I'm not trying to be a misogynist here. It's just reality. So Justin Wise, did she tell the national media that she did make a speech? Oh my God. So it really did happen, if that's the case. Yep. Yeah, she is the first. I agree, Hold on. I'm afraid to say some of this stuff because I feel like I'm going to get banned. From YouTube, or get demonetized or deplatformed just for, I'm just being realistic. There's a reason that, people think that, women don't play in the NBA because they, misogyny, right? Like, for example, I know that the women's national soccer team played 15-year-old like club team in Dallas and lost 7-2 or something like that, right? Like there's just biological differences, and that's what they're trying to. That's what the I don't know. That's just what I guess I'm just going to use the word establishment here. The establishment wants you to believe there's no difference between the two genders, but there are. I mean, I'm not someone who I'm not like a misogynist or a patriot. I'm not that type of guy, but it's just how it is. Yeah, 6'2", 6'2". Yeah. We love you, but your model should have flexibility. Input areas make up for that adjustment. Virtual fans. Yeah, the whole virtual fan thing is so stupid. Like I brought this up on like every live stream, but I keep getting emails from Kansas Athletics and TCU Athletics and the Texas Rangers and the Dallas Stars to like pay money so I can have a cardboard cutout of myself in the arena. Like, why would I pay money for that? Why? Why would I pay money for that? Like, that's just the stupidest thing I've ever heard of in my life. And like ESPN has been trying to make the virtual college game day signs a thing, and it's so stupid. And I remember when I was watching baseball this summer, as well as watching the NFL Thanksgiving Day games. I don't watch the NFL that much, but it was on at the place I was having Thanksgiving this past Thursday, and they did this with the NFL Thanksgiving games as well, but they had like virtual fans for the broadcast. So like every time a good play would happen, they would like switch to a scene of like a grid of like virtual fans like sitting in front of their webcam, kind of like I am right now, but only grainier and fuzzier and more out of focus, and like cheering on their team as something good. I was like, oh my God, that is so cheesy. That is so lame. I was like, if I ever do something like that, like please punch me in the face. Like I would never be caught dead doing that. It was just so lame. Like they think that these virtual fans make up for the fact that there's no actual fan. It's so stupid. But like I just remember the Mariners did, because I had my MLB TV account this past year when I was watching baseball games that I bet on, and the Mariners were big at this. Like the Mariners love to do the virtual fan. It was just so cringy. It made me cringe every time they would show the virtual fans, because they all looked exactly how you expect they would look like, Like if you had to think of a stereotypical person who would be willing to participate in the whole virtual fan thing and how they would look like, yes, they look like that. But like their whole cheers and everything, like most of them did not go all out with their cheering. Like when the Mariners hit a home run, like if Kyle Lewis hit a home run, most of them would be like, yay. Like, that Family Guy episode where they do the cutaway about the one NBA fan and they cut to him in the stands and he's like, yay. That's what the virtual fans all look like to me. Like, yay. Like, it's just like they know this whole thing is stupid and they're doing it against their will almost. But yeah, the whole virtual fans things is so stupid. Oh, I get called a misogynist all the time. All the time. Like, I don't know if anyone follows Aubrey Huff on Twitter, but today he has been making some statements. For the sake of this broadcast and the sake of me being afraid of being like deplatformed or demonetized, I'm not going to say whether or not I agree with them, but let me just say he has been making some statements. And of course, everybody is calling him a misogynist and a bigot and everything. I'll let you read his Twitter account and decide for yourself what to think of it, but I get called a misogynist and all that, a patriarchy, all that, all the time, even though I'm not. It's just that the Overton window continues to shift, and I think a lot of people call me a misogynist because of my views on like things like dating and relationships. I will say one thing I agreed on Aubrey Huff. I'm not afraid to say I agreed with him on this, but he said men need to have options. And I think I did this a week or two ago, but here's another dating advice tip from me. Have options. And by options, I mean, here's the trap that most men fall into when they try to date or have a relationship or whatever. They get locked in on one woman, right? They get locked in on one woman. They rationalize away all of her flaws. They worship the ground she walks on. They put her on a pedestal, and they become completely and totally, I guess the right word would be addicted to this one woman. They become totally invested in her. So their happiness is completely dictated by her, right? And so if this woman blows him off or does not reciprocate the same feelings, or if they're in a relationship, ends it, the guy's going to be totally devastated because, like I said, all of his eggs are in one basket. When you have options, that does not happen. You can think more clearly. You can see more clearly. You're not going to be completely wrapped around one girl's finger, and therefore you make better decisions. Now, I'm not saying go out there and be a player and date 10 girls at once. That's not what I'm saying. It's just when you have options, I mean, when I say you have options, it means you have a lot of women to pick from when it comes to your dating desires, right? And the best way to have options, and I learned this about 5 years ago. I used to be fat, out of shape, and completely undesirable. Like, why would any woman want me? When I look at myself like 5 to 6 years ago, I was about 220. I had a double chin, a belly overhang. I was a slob, right? Like and I realized that like no woman's going to want this. So what did I do? I started going back to the gym. I lost weight. I got in shape. I started eating right. I made myself more desirable. And when you make yourself more desirable, more women are going to be attracted to you, and therefore you have more women to pick from. So if you're not desirable, you're going to have less women to pick from, and therefore you're going to have, I guess the term I've heard used before is one-itis. One-itis, like only one girl. You're going to get one-itis for that one girl, and your success or failure, and therefore your happiness, is going to be completely dependent on her and whether or not she reciprocates your feelings. And that's something Aubrey Huff said that I agree with. It's good to have options. You need to make yourself desirable. And the older you get as a man, for those of you in your late teens, early 20s, let me tell you something. The older you get, the more desirable you become. Because as long as you stay in shape, eat right, stay healthy, go to the gym, all that, the older you get, you're going to become more desirable. Because men age like wine. And I have learned that firsthand. Like, the older I have got, the more like desirable I have become to other women out there. I've seen that firsthand from my own results. I've been a lot more successful in that realm. But as long as you take care of yourself and make yourself desirable, you'll have options. But here's the deal. This all ties back into misogyny. Aubrey Huff said that. I tell people this all the time. It's good to have options. People consider that to be misogynist, as if the best way to do it is to focus on one girl and one girl only and leave it at that. No, that's bad advice. Yes, it's good to focus on one girl when you're in a committed relationship. But if you're trying to find somebody, then that's not the way to go about it. But yeah, if you're married, but if you're in a relationship, yeah, you want to focus on that one girl. Absolutely. But yeah, people say it's a misogynist to make yourself more like, people have called me a misogynist for me actually doing what I did and losing weight and going back to the gym and building muscle and losing the fat and becoming more desirable. People think that in and of itself is misogynist because everyone's like, oh, you should just let girls like you for who you are. That is Hollywood BS. That is Hollywood BS. Like, people watch all these movies where some total loser guy ends up winning the girl at the end, not because she just saw him for who he was. That's not real life. That is not real life, man. And I used to believe that. It doesn't matter what you look like or what you do. It just matters who you are on the inside. A woman will like you for that. That is not true. Not true. Anyway, that is my relationship stuff, man. Like, I could create a separate channel for that alone, because people have sought me out for this type of stuff. Like, I'm not going to go into detail, but I had a internet post go viral on how to succeed at Tinder and Bumble. Like, totally viral. I don't know how it went viral, but to the point where people I had never heard of were coming to me to ask for advice. Like, I could create a separate channel for all this, but I don't, because, this channel is about sports betting, and if I did a separate channel for that, I'd probably be banned, deplatformed, all that. But yeah, I could talk about this for hours, but that is my relationship advice of the week right there. Have options. Make yourself more desirable. Ask yourself, why would a woman want to date me? Ask yourself. You need to turn yourself into the most desirable man you can be. And that is not misogynist. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just truth. It's truth. Like, don't believe the Hollywood BS that, oh, it just matters who you are on the inside. She'll love you for who you are. Like, the greatest example of that is probably the Big Bang Theory. Like, I'm sorry, Leonard was not a desirable man. He wasn't. And yet somehow he gets the hot blonde across the hall. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Oh, yeah. Anyway. Let's get back. Is it okay to check college basketball scores? I'm trying to follow along on the chat. Where did I leave off? Yeah, I want to answer all the questions in the chat, but I went off on a tangent there. Illinois Baylor. My college basketball model is still under construction. It's moving along very fast. I made incredible progress yesterday. The Monte Carlo run is actually pretty much done. The only thing I'm really waiting on at this point is just for more games to be played, because I didn't generate preseason ratings, and I don't think I'm going to do that. There's no point, because I think as long as every team has played about 5 games, I should be good. So it's just the juice isn't worth the squeeze on building preseason ratings. I'll do it for next season probably, but no. You might have to wait another week or two for college basketball. NIMS. Louisiana Tech tomorrow against North Texas, right? I can see that. North Texas, they're only about 30 minutes north of where I'm at right now. They're not a good team. They're not. But Louisiana Tech isn't that good either. And we're playing Louisiana Tech on December 12th for some reason. Yep. Is it okay to check college basketball scores on a date? Probably. I wouldn't let her know. I wouldn't let her know that you're doing it. That's the thing. I don't want to go off into more dating advice, but to answer that question truthfully, the best thing to do, especially on the earlier dates, especially date number 1, is to keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut. I always call it the ratio. The less you say, the better. The ratio. For every 3 words that come out of her mouth, you should only say 1 word. Let her do all the talking, because the only thing you can do, especially in the earlier dates, is hurt yourself. Because with a woman, especially one that you're just met and are starting to date for the first time, you start at the top. Like, in her mind, she doesn't know a lot about you, but she is filling in all the gaps about what she doesn't know about you with positives. Like, whatever she doesn't know about you, she is going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But once you start opening your mouth and what's the right word to use? Once you start opening your mouth, you remove the plausible deniability, and she starts to no longer give you the benefit of the doubt of what she does not know about you, because now she does know about you, and it's not as good as what she thought. So the only way you can go in a woman's eyes in the earlier dates is down. Keep your mouth shut. So when it comes to something like checking college basketball scores on a date, don't do it. The best thing to do is just demonstrate who you are with your actions instead of your words. Because a lot of guys think that what they need to do is talk themselves up and just talk, and talk about how great they are and how awesome they are and all of that. That's not how it works. Your actions speak louder than your words. And that's why it's best to just say as little as possible on a first date. Let her do all the talking, and then you do. The best place to have a first date is always a shooting range. Don't do it at a restaurant or a bar. Never. Never do it at a restaurant or a bar. You know why a shooting range? Because you can do. You can do. What do you do at a restaurant or a bar? All you can do is talk. And what did I say about talking on a first date? You can do nothing but self-depreciate. Put yourself in a situation where there's less talking and more doing, and you will have a much higher success rate on first dates. All right, there we go. All right, so daily fantasy. Yeah, daily fantasy is going to be a component of my college basketball model. It is. If you saw the post I made on Twitter last night, you would have seen the DFS column in there. I didn't even know DFS for college basketball was a thing, but once I saw that, I was like, I have to make a model for it. Make a separate dating. That's the thing. Like, I would make a separate dating YouTube channel. I really would, because I could talk about this stuff for hours. But I just feel like I would be deplatformed and demonetized, even if it was separate, because they were just like, oh, he also has a sports betting account. Let's demonetize that too, because he says things we don't like. Because I've seen my Tinder advice floating around out there on various message boards and websites, and a lot of people say it, oh, that's so misogynistic. That's so, yeah. That's exactly how they would view a dating advice channel I have. It's not misogynistic, it's reality. They know it deep down that it's all true. What I say is all true. They just don't want to admit it. All right. The Bachelor. It's funny you mentioned The Bachelor. I would totally apply to be on it, but I can't because I work for TV stations. And that makes me ineligible because I work for an affiliate of ABC. I know somebody, though, that made it to the final round of auditions for this past season of The Bachelorette, but he didn't get picked because they were trying to get older men. Although when I saw the men that were on this current season, because it's one of the shows I have to track for work, The Bachelorette, I saw the men who were on the season. They all seem pretty young, so maybe that they just told him that to make him feel better. But yeah, I've definitely thought about it before. How much would I sell my model for? I've actually had people want to buy my models from me. I don't know, because I would honestly, because that's the thing, like, I program them for myself. So if I were to sell something, I'd have to create instructions on how to use it, and I would feel guilty selling something to somebody who buys it. It wouldn't guarantee you would profit. Like, if somebody bought my college football model before the season, they'd be losing money right now. Like, it's the same reason I don't take money from people to give them private tutorials on how to do this stuff. It's not that I don't think it would be a good business venture for me. It's that I just feel like I would be under a lot of pressure to make sure they actually win from what I teach them. Because that's why anyone would want to pay for that type of stuff. They're not paying to learn the stuff. They're paying to learn stuff to allow them to win. And that's why I hate touts. It's because touts say, if you pay me, I guarantee you will win. And that's not the case. And so I would feel guilty saying, hey, I'll pay me and I'll teach you how to do this stuff on how to build models. But then there would be an expectation there that they would want to win. And I just don't know if I would be able to meet that expectation. Because you can have all the knowledge in the world you want, but ultimately you have to put it all together in something that works. I can teach you that's what a lot of my videos have done. I've taught the knowledge on how to do various things in terms of sports betting models, but it's kind of I'll use a football analogy here. We had a lot of players when I was at TCU who are very gifted athletes who never saw the field because they couldn't put it all together. Right? Whether they couldn't grasp what to do mentally, or they had all the tools, but they could not put it into a product that succeeded on the field. And that's how sports modeling is. Yeah, you can have all the knowledge in the world of programming and how to do things, but ultimately you have to put it all together into a model. So that's what it is. But yeah, I have people email me all the time asking for help, and I help most. If I see your email, I'll try to help you. Sometimes I might miss it because it'll go to my spam folder or something, but I get emails a lot, and I try to help if I have time. if I don't help you, it's nothing personal. You know, I either missed it or just forgot. But anyway, the one thing that does drive me nuts, and I actually put this as a disclaimer in a lot of my videos, maybe not the earlier ones because I didn't realize it at the time, but it's the people who are asking for help on some, you know, they watch my videos, they try to replicate it, and they come across error messages or problems, and then they're emailing me or leaving comments on my YouTube page asking, hey, I have this problem, how do I fix it? Here's why I hate that, and it's nothing against you personally if you've done this. The reason I hate that is because the best way to learn is to figure things out yourself. So if you have an error, instead of asking me, hey, how do I fix this? Maybe you can Google what the problem is and figure it out yourself. That's the only way you're ever going to learn. Because I program my college basketball model. I'm still running into a lot of error messages all the time, right? And I had to figure them out myself. I don't go running to somebody, hey, I ran into this problem. What do I do, right? No, you need to learn how to self-troubleshoot. That's the only way you'll ever learn and grow. And so if I don't answer your YouTube comment or email saying, hey, I watched your video on X and I'm trying to do this, but I got an error message here, what's the deal? If I don't answer you, it's nothing personal. It's more like tough love. Hey, if you want to become really good at this, because if you're going to acquire the skills you need to build these things out, you're going to need to learn how to get better at this stuff and troubleshoot and learn why error messages exist, what they mean, and what to do about it. Otherwise, what are you going to do? Keep running to me every time you run into a problem? No, it's tough love. You need to learn how to figure this stuff out yourself. But that's the thing. That drives me nuts. But yeah, if you're just asking general questions or need help on general issues, I'll try to help you out. I have nothing against you personally. You know, if I have time, I'll try to get around to it and help you. But ultimately, the best way to learn is to learn yourself. Like I keep pointing upstairs because my desktop computer's upstairs where my college basketball model resides that I've been working on for the past week. And there's a lot of things I've done in my own college basketball model over the past week that I've like taught myself this week. Things I didn't know going into building this model. New concepts and new ideas and new ways to program, new, R functions that I've had to learn, right? For example, my first Monte Carlo run last night took 47 seconds to do 1,000 trials. 47 seconds. So that might not be that bad if there is only, 15 games a day. But what about a typical college basketball Saturday where there's 130 games? Yeah, that's over 2 hours just to predict all the games. No, unacceptable. So I had to figure out how to get the time down. So I had to optimize the code and learn different ways to do things. And my most recent Monte Carlo run was 12 seconds, a lot more acceptable. I don't know if I can get it down any further than that, but 12 seconds for 1,000 trials, pretty good. I had to troubleshoot myself to fix all that. And so now on a typical college basketball Saturday of, 100 games times 12 seconds, that's 12 minutes. Or no, that's 5 games per minute divided by 130. That's about 25 minutes. That's a lot more acceptable. I can do that. But anyway, yeah, self-troubleshooting is the best way to progress and learn. Have I ever had a stalker? That's an interesting question. No, I don't know. I mean, what people don't know a lot about me is that really up until maybe a year or two ago, I always worked a second job because, I had student loans I wanted to pay off. And so I always worked a second job to do that, even though, I didn't have to, but I chose to just do it faster. Like, my salary in Kentucky, especially compared to the cost of living in Kentucky, was pretty dang good, right? I mean, I was making pretty good money for Kentucky to where other people would be like, why the hell are you working a second job when you're making that kind of money? It's because, well, I want to pay off my student loans. And so from the time I graduated in 2011 all the way up until really 2018, I always worked as either a bartender or a server at a restaurant, usually in the bar. Usually it's a bartender, but cocktail server. But anyway, I would have regulars, that would come in. I'd work at these places. I worked at a place in Kentucky for a year and a half. Worked at a place in Iowa for a while. So I would have regulars that would come in of the opposite sex and everything that would leave me their phone numbers, and if I didn't call them back, they would still keep coming, and but I don't think I ever had a stalker. But I definitely had people that I knew were interested, and I would not reciprocate, and they would make efforts to keep trying. Did that happen? Absolutely. I don't know. I did have people. That was the hard thing about being like a bartender or something, is that I never actually. It was, say you had a customer that you were attracted to and you wanted to get her number, right? But you couldn't do it because if you tried and she didn't reciprocate and she told the manager, you were going to get fired. So you kind of had to just hope that she would leave her number, or that you made a good enough impression that she would keep coming back, and maybe you could, Anyway, so did I ever call the numbers back and numbers that were left? A couple times. One was a total disaster. So this girl left a number one time, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll text her back." But here's the deal: if a girl ever leaves you a number, don't text it right away. That just shows that you're thirsty. That'll be a turnoff. Wait a day or two. That way, it shows that you're not like a desperate, thirsty, pathetic guy that was just like, desperate. But I waited a couple days to reach out, and we decided to meet up. Here's the deal. I show up. People are going to call me misogynist for this, and it treads on a lot of the territory that Aubrey Huff covered today. But I showed up, and guess what? She is there with her 6-year-old daughter. You know what I did? I U-turned my way out of there. You don't drop a surprise on somebody like that. If you let them know ahead of time, that's one thing. But no. And so that was one of the disasters of a time I had a phone number left for me. Your old trainer's on the season of The Bachelor? Nice. Yeah, that's the thing. In order to be on a show like that, you kind of have to have a job who's okay with you taking time off. I guess people that can afford to use all their vacation time or whatever. Yeah, you design the sports car but don't race. Exactly, that's a good analogy, Chalmanar. Everything does come back to dating. It ties into a lot of things. Yep. What is the best advice to someone who wants to start a model but has no clue where to start? What stats do you use? You can just say one or two examples. That is a great question, Matthew Januski. Gosh. I always think the best sport to start a model with is basketball because it's linear. There's not a lot of moving parts, and everything you can get is really in the box score. That's all you really need. Yes, you can get a little bit more information out of the play-by-play data, but it's more effort than it's worth. The stuff you can get out of the play-by-play, especially at the college level, it's not really worth the effort to collect all that data. So I think the best sport to start a model for is NBA because you have 30 teams, box scores. And the concepts you really need to learn in a model when building models out are opponent adjustments, probabilities, and that type of stuff. Like, I use the term raw stats a lot, and raw stats are raw stats. I'm going to pull up a web page just so I can explain to you what I mean. Because I want to help you out on this, Matthew Januski. I feel like you asked a good question. So I'm going to pull up an NBA page right here. All right. So I got this. So I'm just going to click on the Bucks. So raw stats. All this right here are raw stats in this per game column. Raw stats. Basically what the player has done up to this point with no context, right? No context. So yeah, Giannis has, 29.5 points a game, but so what? What does that mean? Those are raw stats. So the next level is per 100 possessions. This is a little bit more meaningful. So he scores 44.2 points per 100 possessions, because per game is meaningless in basketball because teams play at different paces, right? So that's why per game doesn't really mean anything, but per 100 possessions, you can neutralize that. So 44.2 points per 100 possessions for Giannis. But still, that's still an unadjusted stat, but it's a per possession stat. So an adjusted stat would be to determine. An adjusted stat takes into account the opponents played and the strength of the opponents you have played. So if those 44.2 points have come against a bad schedule, then an adjusted stat would adjust that downward to account for the fact they played a bad schedule. What you're trying to do when you're adjusting stats is neutralize everything. And by neutralize, I mean, what would the stat be if the player or team was playing against the league average team on a neutral floor? That is considered a neutralized stat because you've taken out all the noise and you determine, okay, if all factors were even, neutral, what would his stat be? And that's more important in college sports than professional sports because the gap between the bad teams and good teams in professional sports is a lot smaller than the gap between the good teams and bad teams in college sports. So adjustments are a lot more important in college sports. I've seen people say you don't really need to adjust stats in the NBA, and I could kind of see their argument. I've done it myself, and the changes are pretty minute when you adjust stats in the NBA, to the point where you're like, okay, what's the point? But I still think it's not a bad idea. Especially if you play in the Eastern Conference in a bad division, then yeah, it might make more sense. But the changes are a lot more subtle. But you still want to do it anyway because you want to neutralize everything. So that's the most important thing to learn when building any model is adjusting the stats to neutralize them. And once you can do that, you can compare every team apples to apples, and you can start going into more advanced concepts. And from there, then you decide, okay, what kind of model do I want to build? Do I want to build a linear regression model? Do I want to build a Monte Carlo model? There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Or you can just do a simple expectation-based model. A Monte Carlo model, you're going to need to convert everything into percentages and probabilities. Like for my college basketball model, I'm simulating the, possession by possession. What are the odds that this possession results in a 2-point attempt, a 3-point attempt, a turnover, a free throw? If it's a 2-point attempt, what are the odds that the shot is made, the shot is missed? What are the odds that it's rebounded by the offense, by the defense? What are the odds when there's a turnover? What are the odds that a steal occurred? You need to convert everything into probabilities and then run a simulation that runs through all those probabilities you've created to come up with the final result. That's a Monte Carlo model. It's kind of complex. It takes a lot of work. You got to convert everything into probabilities and adjusted probabilities, by the way, right? So whether it be a linear model, an adjustment, a Monte Carlo model, or an expectation model, what you do before you determine that is all going to be the same. You need to take all the stats, whether it be by team or the players or both, and neutralize them. That is what you got to do for any model, no matter what. You have to neutralize the stats and adjust the stats. And I show you how to do that in my videos, whether it be the Intro to Power Rating series, Analyzing Sports with Excel series that I have on my YouTube channel videos. I explain how to adjust stats in those videos and neutralize stats. But once you've done that, once you have all your neutralized stats, then you decide, okay, what am I going to do with these neutralized stats? If it's going to be a linear regression model, you got to have a database. And so you got to run the stats for past seasons, right? So you can do the linear regression. So what you do is you have the games played in the past seasons, the final scores, and anything else you want out of that, totals, halves, if you can get it. Then you put the the season stats next to the results in the schedule, and you run the linear regression based on that. So if you're going to do that, you got to have a database. However many seasons back you want to go is up to you. But as long as you're consistent, you can go back as far as you want. But you run into some issues. College basketball is a good example, like when they move the three-point line back, decrease the shot clock. All those things can make it kind of difficult to compare season to season, right? So you're going to have to take additional steps to normalize all the stats season to season to make sure you can compare them apples to apples. That's what I had to do for my college basketball model that was a linear regression based. I pretty much had to take each individual season, determine what all the averages and standard deviations are of all the stats were, and convert everything into standard deviations season by season. That way I could compare everything apples to apples. Otherwise, say you're trying to compare a 2019 college basketball game to a 2014 college basketball game when the shot clock was 35 instead of 30. Therefore, games were going to be slower in 2014, and your tempo comparisons are not going to be apples to apples, 2019 to 2014. So what I did, I might as well show this to you guys. Hold on. I'm going to pull up my college basketball model, my old one, and show you what I mean. Show you what I mean, because I feel like it's best to show you what I mean with an illustrator. So I need to find the right file that this is in. Oh man, but yeah, this is a good subject. I could talk about this, ramble on about it, and it's not dating advice. It makes me feel guilty when I go off subject. All right. So I have the file opened. Whoops. All right, so this is my database, and I went back all the way to the 2016-2017 season, right? So I have 54,894 games in this database that I did the linear regression based off of. And here are all the stats. I have the I'm not going to tell you what the stats are because that's my secret, right? But I do a linear regression based off these stats. But what these numbers represent, let me zoom on this so you can see it better. What these numbers represent are not the stat itself. And here's what I was doing at first. At first, what all those stats represented were what the stat was in comparison to the league average, plus or minus the league average. But what I found was that even the league average method is not consistent enough, because especially early in the season when you're running off preseason ratings, the league average is not consistent enough because the standard deviations are going to be different. Like if you're say the league average tempo is 70 and your average tempo is 68, yeah, you're 2 possessions off the league average, but how does that 2 possessions off the league average compare standard deviation wise? Like, what if the standard deviation of tempo is only 1? Then that's 2 standard deviations, right? So what these numbers represent is the standard deviation from the league average. That way you can compare every season apples to apples. So I could compare a 2017 and a 2019 apples to apples because I'm using standard deviation from the league average to do the regression. So when I'm inputting the coefficients into the regression model, I'm inputting in how does each team's statistic that I'm analyzing compare to the league average. I'm pretty sure this column right here is tempo, though. I'm just going to let you guys know that tempo. So Abilene Christian's tempo in 2017 was 0.57 standard deviations higher than the league average tempo, right? So you run a linear regression based off all these standard deviations, and that's what your coefficients are going to be, right? But you need a database. And the best way to this is free advice, right? Like, I could keep this under, because I consider this kind of to be a secret in and of itself, that I use standard deviations for a linear regression model instead of just the actual stats or versus league average. That's a secret. That's something I had to come up with myself. I didn't learn that from anywhere. That's something I came up with. So that's something you're kind of gaining from watching this stream. But if you're going to do a linear regression model, I highly recommend doing a standard deviation. And the reason I'm showing you this is because I'm no longer using this model, at least as of right now. But say you're doing a Monte Carlo method. From there, you have to convert everything into percentages. And I went over this the other night, but I'll do it again for those of you that didn't watch the other night. What was it? What did I call it? Didn't I call it like the prediction concept or something like that? Yeah, prediction concept. If you're doing a Monte Carlo model, you have to convert everything into percentages. You have to, because that's how a Monte Carlo model works. It's all about running a bunch of probabilities at the same time and eliminating randomness from a series of trials. So if you watched my video the other night, I'm going to zoom in on this before I change over. All right, here it is. If you watched my video the other night, you would have seen this, the Monte Carlo tree. Monte Carlo tree. So I said that in basketball, a possession can end in one of three ways: a field goal attempt, rebounded by the defense, a turnover, or a free throw that is either made or rebounded by the defense, right? So based on all my stats that I've come up with, I determine the probabilities of those events occurring. So I determined that 74.24% of Villanova's possessions are going to result in a field goal attempt. But from there, you have to determine, okay, what are the probabilities that it's going to be a two-pointer or a three-pointer? So of that 74.24%, I determined that, I basically determined that there is if it's a two-point attempt, that there is a 56.2% chance that it's going to be a made two-point attempt by Villanova and a 53.8%. How do I determine this? Well, I did the expectations of the various team stats, right? I have a video on expectation. It's pretty elementary. It was one of the first videos I did. I might need to do an updated video one day on expectation, but I calculated the expectation. Basically, let me show you how I did that. Expectation. So, like, really, to calculate expectation, you take Villanova, for example, to calculate Villanova's expected OE, offensive efficiency, you take their, well, for the sake of this example, let's do this. To calculate Villanova's expected three-point percentage, which is a stat right here, it's 37.8%. That's their adjusted three-point percentage on the season. But to calculate their expectation against Seton Hall, you take that number, find out what Seton Hall's defensive three-point percentage is, which is 29 or 31. I got to zoom out a little bit or scroll over a little bit. 31.3. So Villanova makes 37.8% of its threes. Seton Hall only allows 31.3% of threes taken against them to be made. So you compare that to the national average. Villanova makes about 4.5% more of its threes than the national average, which is this number right here, 33.2. And Seton Hall's opponents only make about 1.9% less than the national average. So you combine that together, you get 2.6%, and then you add that to the national average, 33.2%, where you get 35.8% or 35.9%, right? So on a neutral floor, we would expect Villanova to make about 35.9% of its threes against Seton Hall, but then you got to factor in home advantage, and if Villanova's the away team, you got to multiply that number by 97.5%, so about 2.5% less. Road teams make about 2.5% less of their threes on average, so factor that in. So Villanova's final expected three-point percentage is 35%, and that's how I get this number right here. So I converted all this into probabilities. We can expect 15.6% of Villanova's basically three things can happen on a three-point attempt. A made three, a three-pointer that's misrebounded by the offense, or a three-pointer misrebounded by the defense. Using offensive rebounding percentage, defensive rebounding percentage, all of that, you determine on a three-pointer, 35% of the time it's going to be made, 15.6% of the time it's going to be rebounded by Villanova, and about half of the time it's going to be rebounded by Seton Hall. So the point I'm getting at is, if you're going to run a Monte Carlo model, you got to figure out how to convert all of your adjusted team stats or individual stats, because my Monte Carlo run is actually based on the sum of the individual stats. But in order to do that, you got to convert everything into percentages. Everything. And that's what a lot of these numbers represent. Like this stat right here, P assist, it's the percentage of possessions that the player records an assist on, right? So Colin Gillespie has an assist on about 6.1% of his team's possessions, for example. You have to convert everything to percentages. I did the same for baseball too. If you want to build an NFL Monte Carlo model, very difficult, by the way. I've done it before on drive data, but it is so long ago. But anyway, like regardless of the sport, you have to convert everything into percentages and then play that out in a simulation. Simulate it a bunch of times and get a final result. And then finally, we have the third method, which is expectation. It's the simplest way, and it's not a bad way. It's not. Expectation is not a bad way. And I did this on the stream the other night, but pretty much expectation would be this. Say we determine Villanova's, remember the expectation thing I did a few minutes ago? Say we expect Villanova's offensive efficiency to be for the game to be 1.1 points per possession and Seton Hall's to be 0.9 points per possession, right? And we expect the tempo to be 70 possessions, right? So expectation would simply be, okay, 1.1 times 70 and 0.9 times 70, the number of possessions. 77, 60, that's all hypothetical, but that's how you do an expectation-based model right there. Very simple, but it's not bad. I actually, when I was testing out my Monte Carlo run before the stream, I actually used a simple expectation to check against the Monte Carlo results to make sure it was somewhat in line. And that's how I was able to troubleshoot errors, because I was running the Monte Carlo run, and I did a matchup between Gonzaga and Southeast Missouri State because I wanted to do a body bag type of matchup, you know, a really bad team versus a really good team. And I noticed that Gonzaga's projected final score was too low. It was about 10 points less than what the expectation method was. Like the expectation had it as like 94 to 53, but the Monte Carlo only had it as 84 to 53. So the Southeast Missouri State's team was projected score was right, but not Gonzaga's. So that's why I did the expectation to check against the Monte Carlo results to make sure it's all in line. And so what I did is I used that to troubleshoot, and I determined where the bug was in. I was not calculating expected three-point percentage properly, and that's why Gonzaga's score was too low, and I fixed it. Right? So the expectation model is not bad. It's simple, it's not bad, but what you're losing in an expectation approach is, because all these stats right here in these two lines 42 and 43, all those stats are expectation. You could easily calculate a final score based on all that, but the benefit of Monte Carlo is it gives you a little bit more control over some minor intricacies. And that can make all the difference right there. So anyway, I know I took a long time to answer your question, Matthew, but I hope that rambling I just went on helped you determine a good place to start in a model, but to too long didn't read version of that. Be good at math. Have Excel skills, because Excel's a good place. Even though I program everything in R now, I still use Excel to work things out a lot. You know, I did all this in Excel to work out the Monte Carlo structure. Have good math skills. Books are good too. The book Basketball on Paper is excellent. Sabermetrics, all that stuff, very helpful. So, but yeah, adjustments, expectations, and then the type of model you want. Those are the big 3 questions. Awesome. All right, going back to the chat. Yeah, Tim Daly, going back to that girl who showed up with her daughter. And the reason I knew is her 6-year-old daughter is because someone I worked with knew who she was, and told me after the fact. Anyway, have I ever looked on Tim Livingston's research of the Tim Donaghy? Yeah, Chris Jones, that's a great point. And a lot of people ask, you know, how did Ace Rothstein, who is the guy in Casino, Ace Rothstein, I forgot the name of his character in real life, but you guys know who I'm talking about. The main character in Casino, Robert De Niro's character. How was he so good at sports betting when he didn't have all the computers and models and everything that we have today? It's because he knew what the fixed matches were. He was associate of the mafia who had guys who had refs in their pocket and could fix matches, and had players in their pocket who had point shave. He knew all that. He had all that inside information. That's why he was good. It had nothing to do with the fact that he was just a genius at handicapping games or had a model or anything like that. So what Chris Jones brought up about Tim Donaghy is, yes, I believe that there's crooked refs out there. I believe that there's crooked refs that bet on games, and refs at every level can have an influence on the outcome. Like in baseball, an umpire calling balls and strikes can have a great impact on the total. In basketball, how a ref calls fouls is going to be the ultimate way to control a game, as well as ignoring things. Especially in the NBA, you see traveling ignored a lot. You see things like offensive 3 seconds ignored a lot. In NFL, the best way to influence a game is whether or not to throw a flag on 50-50 things like holding or pass interference. So refs can influence the game at every level, and I believe that there's crooked refs in all levels, in every sport. It's just not something you can factor in. I'm sorry, it's not. I mean, people put umpires in their MLB models, but it's, if someone's on the take and has a vested outcome in either way, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just going to happen. So really the only way you can benefit from it is if you're one of the people that are fortunate enough to know the information, the insider information. But that's how touts operate. Like, if you ever go to websites that feature touts and you read their bios, a lot of their bios have stuff like they were the first to break so-and-so story. You know, like I think one tout bio I read had something to do with like, he was the first to break the story about Florida State cheating scandal against Kentucky in a bowl game. Something like that. And I'm like, touts will... And that was still in his bio like 10 years after the bowl game happened, right? And so I'm like, that's what touts do. They live on the past. Like, what's the guy, Steve Fezzik? He still lives on the fact that he won the NFL Super Contest in 2008 and 2009, 12 years ago. Like, anyway, a lot of touts become touts because they have that inside information on fixed matches, crooked refs, point-shaving players. Yeah, Matthew Dudisky, I don't know when he wrote that comment about an expectation model, but I hope I explained it well enough. But maybe one day when I have like a I'm going to get a actual like permanent resident here at the beginning of next month where I'll have a place to set up a studio and a new desktop computer and everything to be able to do those types of videos again. Maybe I'll do like an updated explanation of the 3 types of models. Analytics on referees, like I said, Robert, and people do. I mainly see it for umpires in baseball, home plate umpires, because how they call balls and strikes can generally have an effect on the total. But I didn't do it personally in my baseball model this year, but other people do it. But I don't really see it done in any other sport because, I guess a way you could do it in NBA is like how many fouls per possession a ref calls. Like, who calls the foul might matter. It just makes my head spin. Yeah, Roto Grinders does have MLB umpire analytics. Yes, I do. Yeah, Chris Jones, basketball is easily my favorite sport to model for. Easily, because it's simple, it's easy, and you can go so deep. And it's just like, I was able to program my Monte Carlo run basically in like 5 or 6 hours last night. That's it. It took me weeks, of like working 6 to 7 hours a day, like maybe 3 or 4 weekends to do my baseball Monte Carlo model, like the Monte Carlo portion, like the portion that actually runs the simulation, because there's so many more moving parts in a baseball game. But basketball, it's pretty easy compared to baseball. It's not easy, but it's easy compared to baseball. But yeah, basketball is easily my most favorite sport to do all this for. Because the data is easiest to come by and it's just simpler. But I actually used to run like a KenPom Spile website, and I was actually looking at my old pages before I started the stream today, because I'm actually thinking about rebooting the website, but that's just a lot of work. Maintaining that website, like that was the thing. When I maintained that college basketball website back in the day, that's all I did. I didn't like actually, have a YouTube channel on the side, and I didn't really bet with that information either. So all I did was run the website. But if I was doing both the website and the betting part of it, that would be a lot of time. So I would really have to, and that was the thing. My web design skills are not great. So the web pages were pretty basic HTML and stuff. And so instead of doing like PHP dynamic server-side scripting, I generated a individual HTML file for every single page of the web page, which was just thousands of files, and it would take like 8 hours to do. So I ran it overnight. So when I woke up in the morning, I could just upload all the HTML files on an FTP. But yeah, if I were going to do that again, I would like definitely have to expand my web development skills to where I'm not doing that. But yeah, basketball is my most favorite sport. Baseball was fun, don't get me wrong. I wish I was a little bit more successful at it this past season, but yeah, Jimmy Touchdown, MLB Daily Fantasy was tough. Even though I did everything right, I mainly did 50-50s and double ups. I had a pretty complex Monte Carlo model for it, and even did videos explaining my strategy, but I just lost more than I won. Simple as that. And I do think that my Monte Carlo model had some flaws that I never got around to fixing, because that's why I shut down the model in the first place, because I was going on my vacation, and I knew the fixes that needed to be made, and I just didn't have the time to devote to it. So I'll give it another crack. I'll make those fixes in the off season. I'll give it another crack next year. But DFS is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, almost too fun, and I can definitely see why you can ban yourself from DraftKings and stuff like that, because after I had lost my initial deposit and then I deposited a little bit more after I changed my approach and lost that, it was really tempting to keep depositing, but I didn't, because I just knew the approach was no good. And that's the biggest benefit of having a model to begin with, is because if you only bet what your model just says to do, but then your model's bunk, you're not going to fall into problem gambling. Problem gambling happens when you don't have a model and you're just making bets off the cuff. But if you have a model telling you when to bet, it's a lot easier to stay out of problem gambling territory. And I just knew my baseball model was no good at that point. It was easy. How many samples would you run through a Monte Carlo sim to get the best approximation? Anthony Fioa, that's a good question. The answer to that question is the most number of simulations you're okay with running in the certain time frame you're looking for, right? So say I want to get all my simulations for the day done in 30 minutes. The most number of simulations I can run. So if I can do, for a college basketball Saturday, because that's always the biggest day of the week where there's like over 100 games, like 130 games on a Saturday, right? That's a lot. So if I have to do 130 simulations on a Saturday, and this can be dynamic, right? And I want to get it done in 20 minutes. And my model says, okay, you can do 130 games in 20 minutes at 800 simulations per game. Then my number is going to be 800. But say there's only, 20 games that day. And okay, maybe I can bump it up to 2,000, because I have enough time, or there's less games, right? So I can afford to do more simulations in that time frame. So the best thing to do is to optimize your Monte Carlo sim to be as optimized as possible, to be able to be as fast as possible, run the most number of simulations in the least amount of time, do that, and then figure out what you're looking for. If you only have 20 minutes, okay, what's the most number of simulations I can do in 20 minutes? That's your answer. But there is a minimum, Anthony. There is a minimum. I would say no fewer than 400. So if your Monte Carlo simulation is too slow to get at least 400 in the time frame you're looking for, you got to learn to optimize better, or maybe look at it. It pains me to say this, but it's the main reason I switched over to R from Excel. Learn a different language that's faster. So, yep. 1,500 is a pretty good sample size, though. That's what I did for baseball, 1,500. Frank Rosenthal, that was the name. Yep, Frank Rosenthal. I knew it was something Jewish. The thing about the movie Casino, I love the first half of the movie when they're just going through the actual casino operations, but I feel like the movie starts to wear on me a bit when they get into the Ginger storyline. I love the actual inner workings of the casino part of the movie. Like, okay, here's what we do to catch the guys cheating at the blackjack table, and how we know they're cheating, and what we're gonna smash their fingers with a hammer in the back room. I love that part of the movie, and also the mafia scenes, like where they explain how the mafia did. But the whole Ginger storyline, it's not my thing. How do I spot trap lines? You have a model, and you run the model and compare it to the lines. But trap lines do exist. A lot of people say that they don't exist. People are like, yeah, there's no such thing as a trap line. They're just trying to get even money on both sides, right? No, they absolutely exist. The odds makers like to be gamblers as well. If they know that they could shade a line a point or two, knowing that they're going to get a lot of money, like you see this in Las Vegas a lot with the Lakers, and now especially with the Golden Knights and the Raiders. They know a lot of locals are going to come in and put money on the Knights and the Raiders. So the odds makers in Las Vegas can afford to shade the lines, a little bit off in those games, knowing that most of the bets they're going to get are going to be for the Raiders, or the Knights. But that also exposes them to the sharp guys who are going to take advantage of the mispriced lines. So really, I would say, do trap lines exist? Yes and no. They exist to an extent, but you're not going to see like a wildly mispriced line. Like you might see a line a half point or a point off what the true line should be, according to the odds makers, but you're not going to see something like 3 points in an NFL. You're not going to see that. Yeah. Bet against touts. Well, that's, what I'm considering doing. It'll cost money, but I think it would bring in traffic to my channel. I'm thinking about buying tout picks and saying how they actually do compared to what they advertise them doing. Like do an expose, but I feel like either lawyers would be sicked on me, or I would be like, here's the biggest thing. I feel like some of these touts have ties to the mob in Las Vegas. And I would be roughed up or assaulted or like that's the thing. When I go to these, I'm pretty sure that touts are aware of who I am. They know my videos are out there. Like, because when I go to the Westgate, that's where a lot of the touts hang out in Las Vegas. But when I go to the Westgate, these guys, they recognize my face. They know who I am. Like some of the well-named touts. And so I just feel like I would be kind of putting myself at risk if I were to do something like that. But I still want to do it. It might not be a bad idea. Like, this tout is advertising like a 70% win rate, and then I buy their picks and show that they suck. Like, I'd have to do it long enough to, like, give a long-term, perspective of their picks. It'd be one thing to buy their picks and, like, after 2 days that went, like, 0-4, be like, oh, they suck. No, it wouldn't be a short term. It would have to be a long burn. But, it's an idea I've had. It would cost money, but, that's the thing that drives me nuts about touts is they're all over Twitter, tweeting out just garbage. Like one of them is Ralph Michaels. I can't stand this guy because I see this. Somehow this guy is popping up. Sorry. Somehow this guy pops up on my Twitter feed a lot. But the things he puts out there are garbage. And it's not so much tout garbage like, oh, look at me, I'm 12-1 in my last 13. It's not that. It's more of like he'll like tweet out stuff like, here is what has happened the last 10 times a favorite of 14 or more has played a road game with a temperature under 40 degrees in November, or something like that, right? And like you look at those 10 games and like they go back to like 1993. And I just want to say, like, what do games played 27 years ago have to do with anything? Ralph Michaels is notorious for stuff like that. But, I'm just tired of these guys popping up on my Twitter feed and showing up on ESPN and all that stuff and peddling their... That's the reason I created this channel in the first place. It's why it's called Sports Betting Truth. The whole point of this channel was just to expose touts. But then I realized you can't throw stones without, having credibility of your own, which is why I had to put up my own sports betting knowledge and, success and failures up there, It's one thing to say touts suck, but it's another thing to say touts sucks when you have something to back yourself up. But originally that's why I wanted to make this channel, because I was just tired of touts occupying the entire space of the sports betting ecosystems on YouTube and social media. It's all touts. So, that's why I have that idea. Do I get raw stats from football for Pro Football Reference? That's probably the best place to get them. I don't run any NFL stuff these days, but raw stats for NFL is probably a good way to do it. You can build a scraper very easily off Football Reference. There's also Python and R wrappers out there that can get you that data. But if you're looking for raw NFL play-by-play stats, that's probably not the best place to get it. Box score stuff and general stats, Football Reference is good, but if you're looking for play-by-play data, you might need to use one of those Python or R packages. Alex Borelli, hey man, I'm a sports analytic major myself at Syracuse and have just gotten into modeling. Do you have any recommendations for just starting out like me? Man, I answered that question on this stream. Maybe I started answering it maybe 45 minutes ago, but you just might need to rewind. I'd love to answer that question again, but I went on for like 20 minutes on that subject, so just rewind. I agree, Micah. In basketball, the better team wins more. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The random elements are less in basketball. You're right, but the random elements still exist, but it's less. New vacation video. Oh man, I had to put those on hold because I've been so occupied with my college basketball model. I only have 2 left. I guess I'll spoil the locations. The next one I drove from Roanoke, Virginia to Atlanta. And then the last video, I'm going to drive from Atlanta to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and then to Houston. So yeah, I just have 2 left. And I ended the video in Houston. The thing is, those videos take a while. Like, they take probably 8 hours to make between all the editing and everything. So all my free time has been spent on my college basketball model. I want to get that in place. And then once I'm done with that, I'll go back to those videos. With how long it takes to run a Monte Carlo, are you going to back test or track a sample going forward? I thought about like back testing it today because I was testing it on various matchups that happened last season, just comparing the so yeah, I could, but honestly, I have enough faith in the approach. You don't really need to back test if you do a break-in period and then generate keys, because once you have keys in place, the keys are pretty much the calibration. So you use keys to calibrate it, like a key. So if a key says if all edges are greater than this, then you play it. So you don't really need to back test if you have in-season testing and then generate keys, and that's what I'm going to do. How did I get into sports betting? Well, I was really into college basketball analytics when I was in high school. I majored in broadcast journalism to be like a sports radio guy, but then I switched over to the TV side and started doing analytics for TV stations instead. But when I lived in Las Vegas, I just kind of really got into I took a vacation to Las Vegas to go to the Mountain West basketball tournament to watch TCU one year, and I had success betting on college basketball when I was there. And, from there, I just I have all this, analytical knowledge in college basketball. Maybe I can use it to bet, so I kind of just always being good with numbers, liking sports and, having a good time in Las Vegas kind of got me into it deeper. Sports betting books. Anthony Fiola, the best books are Basketball on Paper is a good one. It's not a sports betting book, but it teaches a lot of concepts. Basketball on Paper is a good one, and so is the baseball one. Like any of the Bill James books are good. But the thing with sports betting books is that they don't teach you modeling concepts as much as they teach you like either outdated non-model strategies or just general advice, don't overbet your bankroll, quit when you're on it, like I don't know if any of the sports betting books are out there, but like the statistical books like Basketball on Paper, those are the good ones. What is a tout? Anyone who sells picks. Someone who says pay me and I'll give you winning picks. That is a tout. A lot of them lie because if they actually had their transparent, actual long-term records, no one would buy picks from them because they're losers. So they use smoke and mirrors and gimmicks to get people to buy their picks. I have a whole series based on why touts are scammers. Steelers fan? Well, the house does gamble, but they always win just because they rig the odds in their favor. That's all they have to do. By odds, I mean juice or the house edge on table games or slots or anything like that. Yeah, I've always had a policy on this channel not to actually name the touts or their organizations by name because I don't want to give them any more publicity than they already have. But I'm tired of seeing these people pop up on my YouTube feed. Like, and it's not just touts either. Touts are one thing, but the ones that really drive me nuts are the people who aren't touts but have like there's one video YouTube channel that I came across the other day, and I actually tweeted when I saw it. If you saw my Twitter post, I said, man, there are a lot of bad sports betting YouTube channels out there because some guy, I forgot what it was. It was like maybe it'll show up on my YouTube feed if I went to YouTube right now. But his name was like John something, but basically it was like, if you watch one of the first ever videos I put out for my channel, it was a video about like why my channel is different than the rest. And like one of the examples I gave is how some people just like sit in front of their crappy, unlit, low resolution webcam and just kind of like talking to the camera with terrible microphone and all of that. You guys get the idea, but that's exactly what this guy's was. And he has like 9,000 subscribers and like 3,000 views per video because all he does is show like all the money he makes betting on NFL. I'm guessing this guy's videos will show up on my feed, but if not, because he keeps showing up, probably because I keep clicking on them just to like laugh at him. But yeah, like a lot of these channels show up that are not touts. They give away their picks for free, but they still talk about how great they are and how much money they win and then you read the comments, and all the comments are like, oh man, you're so awesome, all you do is win me money. Like, are they shills or do they actually believe? I'm trying to find one of this guy's videos so like I could show you exactly what I'm talking about, because it's terrible. I'm like, how does this guy get views? Maybe if I search my history I can find it. His name's like John something, but that's exactly what it is. It's a crappy, low-resolution webcam, unlit, no microphone, like just terrible production quality. And all of his thumbnails have him holding money in them. Like Week 12 NFL picks right here. Whoops, that's not my history. How do I look at my history? But yeah, I want to show you this guy's videos. It's almost here. His name's John Lawson, and his Week 12 picks has 15,000 views. He has 9,000 subscribers, so that's more than me. But I'm not gonna play the video, but I have it loaded up right now. So here it is. So like, do you guys see this? Let me make sure it's showing up. So yeah, so this guy sits in front of his camera and he just like, here's what I think. The Raiders, they are not going to get it done this week. Yeah, I'm going with Raiders -3. But here's the thing. I watched this video. He had the Raiders -3 against the Falcons in this video, and they lost 43-6, by the way. But like, he doesn't have all he does is use his head. And like, look, I'm not trying to make fun of this guy or anything, but does he look like somebody who would be like really good at picking NFL, the sharpest betting market in the world? Does he look like someone who's gonna beat it? Like, if this guy was so good, because the thumbnail of this video is him holding money, but if he was this good, do you think he'd be able to afford better production values than that? And look at all the comments. But well, this guy called him out because it was after the fact. These picks were lousy. But that's the thing. This guy, Brian Wells, you win the prize, Brian Wells. You win the prize. He's saying what needs to be said. You know what guys like this guy don't? You know what this guy doesn't do? He will not admit that he had he will not come out with a video saying, yeah, I had a bad week. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Let's get him next week. No, he's going to be back this week whenever he comes out with his next video, either ignoring the fact that he had a bad week last week or, well, yeah, ignoring it, and then just still holding up his money and being like, oh, man, yeah, I make all this money betting NFL, and here's all the money I'm going to make this week with my picks. That's what he's going to do. So good job, Brian Wells. But, like, all the comments are like, yeah, all these comments are calling him out because they are all after the fact. But, like, all the comments before the games are played are like, you are the man. And he has a Patreon account. That's something I've never done. People are like, you should have a Patreon. No, I'm not going to charge people anything for any, I don't want to. I feel like if I charge people for a Patreon, or like, I'll like, I'm not going to do that. But like, what does this guy have a Patreon for? If his picks are so great, why does he need a Patreon? Isn't he making money hand over fist? So yeah, these types of videos are driving me almost as crazy as the touts, because they're like, yeah, I'm not charging you for these picks, but look at all this money I'm winning, right? Yeah, if I click on his channel, like all the thumbnails are him holding money. See? Yeah, look, he's holding money. Like,
to the best gambling show on
the
the
best.
internet.
Like, he sounds like a tout. He's like, welcome to the best gambling show on the internet. He sounds like a tout, but he's not one because he's not charging money for this. But that's what people like this do. They give away their picks free at first, and they hope they hit a hot streak. And if they hit that hot streak, then they'll go tout. But yeah, I could have thousands of more subscribers and views if I did stuff like this, because a lot of people just hear what they want to hear. A lot of people don't want to be told, yeah, this is really hard, and if you're going to succeed, you have to put in the work, and it's a lot of work, and even if you are successful, you're not going to make a lot of money. You're going to grind out like minor prop. That's the truth, right? That's why my channel doesn't have as much subscribers and views as a guy like this, because a lot of people just want to watch a video of someone who they think is good, who will tell them what to bet and just go bet it and move on with their day. They don't want to be told that it's hard. They want to be told it's easy, and people like this guy can lead them to the promised land. That's why people like this guy have so many views. Yeah, these videos are just as bad as the touts. And then there's another channel I came across. I forgot the guy's name. His name was like Andrews or something. Let me see if I can find it. And I was like, this guy is right and wrong at the same time. I forgot his name. I don't want to call this guy out because I actually thought his videos were pretty good. Let me see if I could find this guy's videos because I think he deserves at least I would say he's more good than bad. Let's put it this way. If I could find the guy's channel, his name was like Mark Andrews or something like that. Captain Jack Andrews, right? Found it. Okay, so I feel like a lot of his videos are good because are you seeing this? So this guy has about 6,000 subscribers. Sports betting education. So I would say his videos are good. He's not a tout. He's not a pick seller. He's not a do this and you're going to win a lot of money type of guy. The only issue I have with this guy, and like I said, like I'm being nitpicky here because I think his content is pretty good. I watched his videos, right? And he's doing it right. He's doing sports betting YouTube right, unlike pretty much everybody else. But I watched this video right here, turn your NFL season around. The issue I have with that video is that the 5 ways he gave to turn an NFL season around are not ways that are going to win you money. And I think that's what's being implied. And if I'm wrong, correct me. But what he was saying is like, do these 5 things to turn your NFL season around. So people are going to see that and be like, oh, if I do these 5 things, I'll start winning. Not exactly. And I wish he clarified this in his video because I think he has good content. Like I said, he has good content, but that's the one thing I think he should have clarified in that video. Those things might turn around your NFL season in terms of losses. Like you might start losing less money, but none of the things that he gave in those videos are going to allow you to turn your season around in terms of being profitable. Except maybe, I think the one tip that I was like, okay, maybe that he's making a good point. Long teasers, if you can get favorable payout tables, which are really hard to do. But I think those are one of the 5 points, and the other one was player props. Player prop markets are pretty soft, and if you have a decent model, you can usually beat them, but you'll be limited fast if you bet too much, and they're kind of inconsistent. By inconsistent, I mean, they vary from book to book. But yeah, those 2 things, yeah, but but I think this guy does deserve a subscription because I think he's right more than he's wrong, but I do wish he would go into the analytical side more. He has some analytical videos, but I think that's the ultimate thing about betting on sports. If you're going to profit, which is what most people want to do, you got to put in some level of analytical work, and I do wish he went into that more. But yeah, this guy, for the most part, knows what he's talking about. I watched this video with his interview with Alan Dankeman, and I don't know if that Alan Dankeman or whatever his name is as good as people as he is portrayed to be. So anyway, that's that. All right, catching up on the chat. Yeah, Steve Stevens is a tout. Sports analytics is a major. Yeah, I didn't know that was a major either. That's a dream job of mine. I'd love to be hired on by like a professional sports team to do their that would be so much fun. I just don't know how you'd get that job. Like, how would you apply for it? I'm guessing like organizations go out and find people rather than people applying to them. That's how I'm guessing it works. They'll go out and find you. And hey, if you're work in the front office of a sports team, hey, I would love to work for you. I'd love to get out of the TV industry. I can do sports analytics. Are future bets dumb? The reason I don't like futures is because for them to be any good, you got to have a Monte Carlo simulation that can simulate an entire season. And then you tie your money up for a long time. I just don't like having my money tied up that long. I did make some future bets on like college basketball conference tournaments last year, but that money's only being tied up for a week. But I don't like the long-term futures. Mathletics, yeah, that's a good one too. Good one, Peter Hoffman. Have I seen the new Circus Sportsbook? Yeah, I went there when it was under construction, and I've only seen pictures and videos, but I am very impressed. I'm going to have to go there next time I'm in Las Vegas. I already said, though, I'm boycotting Las Vegas until all this stuff is over with, though, the COVID stuff. But I was very impressed with the pictures and videos. They're going to give the Westgate a run for their money. The only issue I have with downtown is that you have to pay to park most places. But, yeah, very impressive. They don't have a horse player area in Circa. That's a plus in my opinion. I feel like, and I get why sportsbooks place such emphasis on their horse racing sections because they make the most money off of that. But and they also get the most regulars from that. But sometimes I feel like it takes up too much space, and I actually think that's a plus. I love Green Valley Ranch, Mike. I spend a lot of college football Saturdays there. Never been to the Sam's Town book, though, but Green Valley Ranch is one of my go-to places. What's the most I've ever bet at once? I have a video on that, $550. You can look it up. I won it, by the way. Spoiler alert. That's the thing. If I have it, like I said, a Patreon. If I had a Patreon, I feel like that would put a lot of pressure on me to really deliver. And I talked about this earlier in the stream. You know, if I charge people to, you know, give them like private lessons or tutorials on how to build models, I feel like that would put a lot of pressure on me to give them stuff that would help them win. And I don't know, you know, like I said, it's not, you can have, like someone said it earlier, you can have the best race car in the world, but ultimately you have to have a good driver to drive it. And I could teach people how to build the best race car in the world, but can they drive it, you know? Exactly, Anthony. That guy looked like he was in like a room in his parents' house or something, you know, like his own bedroom. Why don't people buy tout pics, leak them after they buy them? I'm sure some people do. I'm sure a lot of people share the pics and everything. It's just, you know. Captain Jack follows me on Twitter. Yeah, he's I like his content. I think he is worth subscribing to. Like I said, he's right. He's right. I like my nitpicks of him are very nitpicky. Let's put it that way. Like that would be like me saying I don't like. Who's somebody I like? You know, I love Jay Billis as a college basketball analyst, but I can't stand him as an NCAA hater. When he's talking about college basketball analysts, I think he is the best analyst out there for any sport. But when he's talking about NCAA rules and eligibility and all, that's kind of like, you know, I think I think Captain Jack is a good, he knows what he's doing. He does. I like his content. When I was criticizing his video, I wasn't criticizing him. You know, I was just saying, if I made the same videos he made, I would make a disclaimer at the beginning saying this will help you lose less, not necessarily win more. Yeah, fading the public is good advice, and I have a video about that in my failed sports betting strategies series. You know, that video I filmed on the Strip, and I talked about why fading the public, it's not a bad strategy, but it's if doing it alone is not going to win you money in the long term. So you can fade the public, and you'll do good. You might break 50% fading the public. I mean, you probably will, but you're not going to break 52.4%. Fading the public is good when used in conjunction with other strategies. Like it can be a good additional step, like a filter almost. In Finland, there is a man who predicted weather using a frog. Do I use the Betfair exchange? I wish I could. I don't live in a country that allows me to. Do I have a video that talks about my background? What exactly do you mean? Background? Like background in terms of betting? Not so, not. I have a video there where I did like a hour-long video. I'm serious about my experience playing football at TCU, but that's a good question. You know, I just, like I said, my sports betting background really started with college basketball analytics when I was in high school. I was a big fan of, you know, trying to come up with like power ratings for college basketball, mainly to justify why I think certain teams should have been included into the NCAA tournament, because I was really into like bracketology and all that, and I felt like the best way to support my arguments would be to create like a rating system. So I made like an ELO rating system and all that, and then I found Ken Palm and saw how he did things, and you know, I tried to emulate him, and it kind of went off from there. Education and profession. I went to TCU, got a degree in broadcast journalism. Yep. Did sports radio for a couple years, and then I moved over to the TV side where I started doing analytics for TV stations. I consider myself to be both a statistician and a data scientist. That's what I do for TV stations. I do analytics for 66 different TV stations in the country. That's what I do for, that's my day job. 66. So yeah, I do a lot of data, and yeah, Chalman, going back to the dating subject, I would never talk about that stuff with a woman, especially on our first date. I would never do that. Talk about something that would like turn her off big time is like telling her that you're a data cruncher. No, I didn't major in stats. Everything I know is self-taught, but I'm going to be honest with you. I have a very high IQ. I got a perfect score on my ACT. I got a near perfect score on my SAT. I got a perfect score on the math section. So I have a very high IQ. So I guess I have a better propensity to teach myself things than other people might have. Kind of toot my own horn here, but it's just the truth. So maybe I have advantages mentally that other people don't have. Yeah, like I was a prodigy. When I was in first grade, I had to go to the middle school to take algebra. They bust me over when I was in first grade because I was like so smart. Like I was one of those kids. But ultimately, I wanted to have a normal life. So what my parents did is they started sending me to a magnet program that was for very gifted and talented students like me. And so that's what I did as far as grade school goes. But I had a normal school life, you know. Then we moved to another city where the school district had that type of program like at the schools themselves. Instead of having to go to like a magnet program, they just had a gifted and talented wing at all the schools that I was a part of. But yeah, I was always a prodigy. Like I was taking like middle school algebra in first grade. I would guessing that like my teachers would be disappointed in me in terms of like me not becoming like the next Albert Einstein or like a rocket scientist or something. Like I didn't become like some like, you know, something like that, even though maybe they thought I had a potential to be that, because I was never really that interested in schoolwork. I was always interested in sports. I mean, I played baseball and football and I ran track, and that's what interested me. Like my GPA was not that good. My ACT and SAT scores were really good, perfect ACT score. But my GPA, I wasn't even in the top 1/3 of my class because I just did enough to get by. My bare minimum effort was good enough for a B, straight B's. I didn't even have to try to get B's, and that's what I did. I never did homework. I never read books for English class. I never read my textbooks for any other class. I always did the bare minimum, and I was so smart that this was in AP classes too, advanced classes. This wasn't in general classes. This is all AP and GT classes. My bare minimum was good enough to get straight B's, and that's why my GPA wasn't even in the top 1/3 because I didn't care. And so I only applied to 2 schools. I applied to TCU, which I was always going to go there. And I applied to Rice, and I got into Rice, even with a GPA that wasn't even in the top 1/3 because my ACT and SAT scores are so good. I didn't go to Rice. I just applied to Rice to see if I could get in. Yep. What's an easy transition for simple Excel models? I use R because it's what I use for work, and so I'm already versed in it. But I would honestly recommend Python before R because you can do more with Python. I just know R like the back of my hand, but Python not so much. That's why I use R. But definitely Python. And I don't want to plug them because I hope to one day gain a sponsorship from them. But I think the website DataCamp is very good for learning Python in R. $150 is well worth it. Going back to the dating topic, one of my first dates was to the off-track book. That's not a bad first date. Yeah, that's the reason I went to TCU, because I wanted to play either baseball or football there. That's why I went there. If I wasn't going to play either one of those sports, I wouldn't have gone to TCU. It was too expensive. I had to work very hard after I graduated, working 2 jobs for many years to pay off my student loans. I had a 25% academic scholarship, and that was it. So basically, I got 1 year free. But I was there for 5 years. So even 4 years at TCU was still over $100,000 that I paid back every cent. Every cent. Working 2 jobs for many years. And that's what ticks me off about people who want student loan forgiveness, is that what about people like me who worked my rear, I worked even 3 jobs at one point to get all that paid off. What about people like me who basically sacrificed my entire 20s because I finally got them paid off in 2019? What about someone like me who sacrificed basically my entire 20s to work multiple jobs to pay off my student loans? What about someone like me? Do I get anything? This is another topic in and of itself, but I think the reason student loan debt is so bad is because there's a parasitic relationship or symbiotic relationship between higher education and the government. The higher education knows that there's student loans being handed out like candy out there, so the people going to these schools don't care about how much it costs because they're just going to be like, okay, I'll just get student loans to pay for it. So the colleges know this, so they can jack up tuition. And so they jack up tuition, which means the government is going to give out more student loans, which means it never ends. If you really want student loan debt to no longer be a problem, you got to get the government out of the student loan industry, and then tuition prices will plummet overnight without the, easy to get student loans out there. And then tie any student loans to what you're going to major in. If you're going to major in something stupid, like theater or dance, something where it's really hard to get a job, and if you do get a job, it's not going to pay very well to pay back your student loan, you don't get a student loan. You're going to have to pay for that yourself. But if you're going to major in something actually employable, yeah, you might be able to get a student loan, but that's how it should be. But yeah, I worked 2 jobs for 8 years to pay off all, because I did the responsible. It sucked. Yes, it sucked, but it ticks me off. I mean, yeah, in that's I'm not trying to boast, but the reason I talked about how I was like a prodigy and everything and how I have a high IQ and all that is because maybe someone like me is more inclined to be able to teach myself how to do some things without needing the formal education for it. Um, so maybe my experiences might not mirror like somebody else because I'm very good at math. I've always been good at math. Yeah. A $50,000 check, but with what money though? With what money? Yeah, here's the issue I had with college is like why did I have to take classes like history, English, sociology? Like why? Obviously it's so the school could make more money, but college would be best if you only went to college to take the classes you need to take. Right? Sounds like a pretty common sense idea to me. When can I start selling my picks? I will never start selling my picks ever. Yeah. Like John Brown, I would have done what you did. I probably would have gone to North Texas or maybe not North Texas, but I probably would have gone to a better state school if I wasn't dead set on playing a sport at TCU. And a lot of people are like, was it worth it? Because I basically, in order to be a walk on at TCU football, be a part of all that, basically cost me about $100,000 that I paid back for 8 years. Was it worth it? I mean, it was worth it. I have no regrets at all. I would do it over again 100 times. Um, but yeah, it costs a lot of money. But I definitely would have done, like, if you are not dead set at playing sports at a out of state school or a private school or whatever, just go to a state school. That's what I've noticed. I've gotten to the point where I interview people and look at resumes and everything. I don't really give a crap what college you went to. I care about, are you capable? And just because you go to Harvard or Yale, it does not mean you are capable. Just because you go to a state school or a community college doesn't mean you're incapable. Did we have a UIL math competition? Yeah. It was called the Academic Decathlon, and they always asked me to be on it, but I was just so busy with sports. Like I said, I played baseball, football, and track, so I didn't have a lot of downtime, and I worked too. I started working when I was 14. So I always had a job or was playing sports, so I just didn't have time for another extracurricular. Yeah, I honestly believe that I had some doors open to me that I wouldn't have opened otherwise had I not played football at TCU. I'll just admit that. I mean, I'm not saying I was hired for a job because of playing football at TCU, but it definitely opened some other doors in other areas. It's funny you say that JHW3D because, like, the first time I went to Las Vegas, right? I did really well betting college basketball. I was there for the Mountain West Conference tournament, and I did really well. So when I got home, I got an Excel sheet out, and I was like, "What if I did as well as I just did, every day?" And so I ran the simulation. And I was like, "Oh wow, I would make money hand over fist," because that was my first experience with sports betting. I did really well, beginner's luck, I guess. All I did was look at the board and make picks. And I did well, and I was like, oh, sports betting is easy, That was my sports betting is easy phase. And so I was like, wow, if I do that, then I'll be really good. But, so when I got the job at ESPN Radio in Las Vegas and moved there, and, I was like, wow, betting on sports is going to be a second income for me, right? And I lost. I didn't lose my ass, but, I did not replicate the same success I had betting college basketball um, the year before, right? And so that fantasy I had of doing so well betting on sports, it being so easy that I could make enough money to pay my student loans off, which is, what I thought, was just that, a fantasy. So that's ultimately what got me to the drawing board. I was like, okay, in order to actually have any chance of success betting on sports, you probably got to have some analytics behind it. And that's what led me down to the path of creating models. How far back do I go back with data that feeds the model? I talked about this earlier when I was showing off my data and talking about how it can be dangerous to go back too far because of rule changes and the game not being apples to apples. Rule changes are a big deal and can affect things. In the NFL, we've seen it affect offenses that are a lot better. But in basketball, the college basketball, the tempo is faster now because the shot clock is shorter. So it could be dangerous to go back too far. As far as you basically want to go, though, as long as you do what I did, what showed you what to do earlier in the video, and that's use standard deviations to compare previous years instead of the actual stat itself. It takes a lot more work. You have to go season by season and calculate standard deviations and how these statistics deviated from the standard deviation. Got to do that. But it means you can compare past season to absolute app. It's the only option. But yeah, as far back as you feel like going, I usually go back 4 years in college sports because that's a recruiting cycle. In some sports, you can afford to get away with less. Like in college football, you might want to go back farther because less games, so less sample size. Like in baseball, you can afford to only do 1 or 2 seasons because there's so many games. But yeah, it's kind of dynamic. Yeah, fading the public is a good idea in NFL. It's not going to doing it blindly isn't going to win you money long term, but it'll be better than doing nothing. Yeah, only 5% of poker players win. That was the one thing I noticed when I lived in Las Vegas, and you still really notice this today too when I go back, is how many people say that they are professional poker players for a living. And a lot of people say that they're professional poker players or pro gamblers or pro sports bettors. But just because you're a pro at something does not mean you profit and are winners. But yeah, especially in 2012 when the economy was still pretty bad in Las Vegas, and I would just come across people at sports books who say they just bet their unemployment check on a game. But there is a ton of people that were there that moved there to try to make it in poker. And I've always said this, before you have such a stupid idea to move to Las Vegas to make it in poker, because a lot of people have done that and a lot of people have busted out. But before you do that, go to Las Vegas and play in 10 tournaments, daily 10, 12 people tournaments. Play in 10 of them. If you win 7 of them, you might be good. You might have a chance. If you can't win at least half of them, you're not going to all of a sudden figure it out. You might figure it out over time, but you're not going to figure out fast enough to be able to sustain a bankroll. Sustain a bankroll large enough to fund your poker playing and your life, right? So yeah, I met a lot of poker players, dime a dozen, who moved out there to try to make it in poker, and it's not like I knew them personally. It's not like I was friends with them, but I just talked to them in passing at sports books and around Las Vegas. It's a fantasy. Like it's a fantasy. And to a lesser extent, you met people who say that like they bet on sports as like I was at Red Rock last year for a college football Saturday, and the guy to my right was some dude, and he just had all these parlay tickets scattered out everywhere. And I was looking at them, and he's like, "You see this?" He's like, "This is how I eat. This is how I eat." And I'm like, okay, this guy must suck at math. If that's how he makes money, this is how he eats. Unless he's making a profit on all these parlays he had. Like, it was a ridiculous number of parlays, and I guarantee you he wasn't. He's losing money. So if he's doing that to make money to pay the bills, he'd be better off not doing it at all. But, a lot of people can't do basic math. But yeah, you meet, if you live in Las Vegas, you'll meet those people who are there, who have no job and are there to make money betting, whether it be playing blackjack or video poker or any betting. That's what they're there for. And I highly doubt even a small percentage of them are successful. I would guarantee you that most of them are failures at what they're set out to do. Yeah, I was watching that. I was watching that Eagles game. I was at a Mexican restaurant sitting at the bar, and it was on the TV. And I remember watching that Eagles game and saw them score that late touchdown to the tight end. And then they went for 2, and they got it. And they pulled within, 23-17, I think. So, yeah, that was going for 2. Texas Tech did that against TCU last month. They went for 2. They are down, I want to say they're down 30. They're down 27-10 or something like that. And they scored a touchdown, and instead of kicking the extra point to make it 27-17, they went for 2 to make it 27-18. And a lot of people are like, why? Well, that's because they just need a touchdown and a field goal to win it now instead of otherwise they'll tie it. So it's an aggressive move to kind of get the momentum in your favor, put pressure on the other team. And it almost worked because we went 3 and out after that, and then they drove the length of the field instead. But then their coach made another aggressive move that backfired on them. So that's the thing. If you're too aggressive, it'll ultimately backfire. So what their coach did is on 2nd and 4, right? 2nd and 4, from like the 20-yard line, they kicked a field goal. The idea being, it was in the 4th quarter to save as much time as possible, but they missed it. So the game was pretty much over after that. And then we housed a touchdown on a 75-yard run the play after. So if they had made that field goal, though, now all the pressure would be on, because then we'd only be up by 6 and have to make another stop, and they score a touchdown, they can win the game. But it's just an aggressive move to kind of give you momentum. Yeah, Chalman R. I know someone who moved there. One guy I talked to moved there with a $20,000 bankroll, and all he did was really bet NBA and NBA parlays, and he only lasted like 3 months. He lost about 12,000 of it before just moving back to, I think, Michigan is where he came from. But that's the thing. A lot of people are like, oh, I can make it on 20,000 in Las Vegas, but you got to remember, you got to pay your living expenses. So even if you keep it at a minimum, you're still looking at like $2,000 a month and just, living expenses. So and then you got to use your bankroll to make enough money to support your living expense, at least break even, And if you're losing, I think said he was betting $50 a game, and he said, my goal is to win $100 a day. And it's a lot easier said than done. Like, if it were that easy, I just need to win $100 a day. If it was that easy, everyone would do it, but it's not. A lot easier said than I used to think the same thing. I was like, I just need to find that one winner every day and just bet $100 on it, and that's a fantasy, and it's not realistic. And so this guy, I remember all he did was bet NBA and NBA parlays. He lived in a crappy apartment with a roommate, and he lost 12 of the 20 grand and then peaced out. A lot of people don't a lot of people think they can move to Las Vegas and make it just betting, and it's not realistic. Like, I moved there for a job. And I tried to, make betting my second job, so to speak. It didn't work. It didn't work. Russell Westbrook for John Wall. I mean, is that going to keep James Harden there? I think the Rockets getting rid of James Harden would be adjusted by subtraction. Yeah, this is how I eat, guy. This is how I eat. And then he leaves. He left, I guess, for good, because I was there all day, and he left all those tickets behind. I don't know how many of them he actually cashed, but they are college football parlays and baseball parlays. Yeah. He must be crazy hungry, yeah. I still remember that guy though. But like when he said, "This is how I eat," like it was as if he he makes money doing that. I just didn't believe him at the time. But it's not like I like this guy's sitting next to me. It's not like it's like I don't believe you. I always play along with these people. I always give them the benefit of the doubt because I don't want to be a jerk to these people. I don't go sports betting truth on these guys. I go along with it. Because when you're in a sports book, it's kind of like being at a craps table. Everyone's there to have a good time. So you want to celebrate with the other people. Like on a typical college football Saturday, if I'm at the Westgate, I'm sitting at the same place every Saturday. And so it's always along the rail. Like there's a bar top that's like a shape of like a pill, a cylindrical shape. A bar top, and I always sit at the far right. And so every Saturday there'll be a group of guys that like take up the rest of the table, and they're all making stupid bets, but most of them are just tourists that are just there to have a good time, right? So I'm not going to go full sports betting truth on them and be like, "Oh, you made a parlay? That's so stupid. You should make a straight bet with a mod." I don't do that. I wish them luck, and like if they win, I celebrate with them. I'm there to have a good time at the sports book. So I'm not a jerk to these people. Like there's a group of guys from like Illinois or something like that that I spent all Saturday with on a college football Saturday last season. We had a blast. Like that was the day I bet $550 on Florida Atlantic. Had a blast. They all subscribed to my YouTube channel, like all of that. I'm there to have a good time. And so this is how I eat. That guy, I was just wish him the best of luck, and if he won, I was like, hey, yeah, good for you, Casinos and sportsbooks where there are none here in Texas. Nope. You gotta use a local, and the local just copies lines from... My local just copies Pinnacle lines, so... My personal college football top 6. God, what a terrible season for that. Obviously, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. Those are my top 3 undisputed. I don't care if Ohio State only plays 4 games. I don't care. They're one of the best 4 teams. If you have a problem, blame the playoff system. We talked about this last week. The playoff system is to blame, not Ohio State only playing 4 or 5 games. The playoff system needs to stop being arbitrary and give out automatic bids. Then people stop complaining. But those are the top 3 teams, undisputed. Number 4, I don't think Texas A&M is going to go 11-1 or whatever, 9-1 or whatever. I think they're going to lose one of the 2 to Tennessee and Auburn. I really do. But if they do go 10-1, do you include them over Notre Dame? And here's the thing with Notre Dame. They're undefeated right now. Say they go to the ACC championship game, they lose to Clemson, which probably will happen. Let's be honest. I think you should put them in over Texas A&M, and here's why. They beat every team on their schedule at least once. Now, I know they beat a Clemson without Trevor Lawrence, but if Texas A&M's going to go in, they're going to play Alabama anyway, who they already lost to by 25 or however badly they lost. So either way, you're going to get a rematch. Notre Dame, Texas A&M, either way, you're going to get a rematch. At least Notre Dame, Clemson. Well, that's the thing about Notre Dame, Clemson. People will be like, well, it's a rematch of a game that just happened. Texas A&M and Alabama happened in week 2. Maybe Texas A&M's got better. I could see that argument. And it'll also be, they'll play on a neutral field. It was played on Alabama's home field. I could see that too. I think Texas A&M would be team number 4 in that scenario if Notre Dame lost to Clemson in the ACC title game. I do. But I don't think it will get to that point because I do think Texas A&M will lose one of their next 2. That's my top 5 right there. And then number 6, Florida. Yeah, Florida. Yep, there's my top 6. So here's another scenario. Say Florida beats Alabama in the SEC title game, then what? You have Florida would obviously get in, But then who do you put in between Texas A&M and Alabama? You could say, well, Alabama beat Texas A&M, so it'll be them. But then you'd be like, well, Texas A&M beat Florida. It would be like a round robin, like a love triangle between the three. I just don't think it'll get to that point, though. I think everything will take care of itself. I think Florida will lose. I think Texas A&M will lose, and then you just put in Notre Dame. I don't think Cincinnati will get in. They'll put Cincinnati at 5, but they will not put them at 4. I talked about this in the beginning of the stream. That's why the playoff exists, to exclude teams like that. Yeah, are we sick of Alabama and Clemson? I am. You know, that's the problem I have with the college football playoff, is that if it's going to be structured like it is, it's going to be the same teams every year. It's not a real playoff. It's an invitational. If you're sick of the same matchups, you need to support expanding the playoff and automatic bids so we can get fresh and interesting matchups. But as long as it's 4 hand-picked, arbitrarily selected teams, it's almost always going to be Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, like Oklahoma. You will get fresher matchups and more interesting matchups, and also the potential for upsets and everything like that with an expanded field with automatic bids. But the reason it doesn't happen, I said this at the beginning of the stream, it's all about control. Control over the people, control over the money. They would rather make less money but only have to divide it 4 ways than make more money but have to divide it 8 or 16 ways. A 16-team playoff with automatic bids would make money hand over fist. March Madness makes a lot of money because it is... March Madness makes a lot of money. March Madness makes way more money than the college football playoff. Are you kidding me? And the reason March Madness makes a lot of money is because it's inclusive and it's not arbitrary, and the way it's set up provides for a lot of excitement, drama. Bracket pools have become a thing. That's probably the biggest reason that NCAA March Madness is so big. The bracket pools, that it would a 16-team playoff in college football would make a ton of money, but it's not. It doesn't happen because they don't want to split the pot more than they already have to. Yeah, I just don't see Cincy being the. I don't see him letting him in. I don't think they're a top 4 team, to be honest with you. I don't. I think they had to beat UCF by more than 3. That's the thing. Style points matter for a team like Cincinnati. You got to leave no doubt, and beating UCF by 3 left out. I go back to my TCU team. Our biggest road games in 2009 and 2010, we won at BYU by 31, and we won at Utah by 40. Our biggest road game is against the top contending team in the conference besides us. We went on the road and beat the crap out. That's what Cincinnati had to do against UCF. They didn't. And UCF probably isn't even, they're probably not even in the top 3 AAC teams. I think that Tulsa is better, and probably Memphis. So you got to do better than that. And it didn't help that SMU, which was probably their best win up until the point, got blown out by East Carolina. So, yeah. I don't think Cincinnati's a top 4 team, but I support Cincinnati in the fact that I think we should expand the playoff so they can at least prove it. The David Clark, I agree with you about Notre Dame. The thing is, I think the argument between a Notre Dame with 1 loss and an A&M with 1 loss would be, if Notre Dame were to be team number 4, they would play Alabama, so it wouldn't be a Clemson rematch, but still. If they're team number 4 after losing to Clemson in the title game, people would be like, yeah, Notre Dame beat every team on their schedule, but they only beat them at home with the backup quarterback, and then they got to play them on a neutral field at full strength, and they lost. And then the argument for A&M would be they played Alabama, but it was in the second game of the year. They might have gotten better since then, and they played on the road. They didn't play at a neutral site. That's how I'd see the argument playing out. Either A&M or Notre Dame would lose to Alabama by 25 plus, so it doesn't matter. But I think FCS moved to 24 teams. But if I was the king of college football, I would have 10 automatic bids for the playoff and then 6 at-large teams. First round played at the home field of the higher seed. Well, LSU, as an athletic department, made a lot of money in football, but March Madness is worth $2 billion. It's the king, and that's why I was so surprised they canceled it last year. They basically left $2 billion on the table. I'm talking about the college football playoff versus the NCAA tournament. The NCAA tournament makes more money and has more lucrative TV contracts. Yeah, the committee and conferences to decide everything. Yeah, it's corrupt. That's why they have a committee, to be a gatekeeper. It's not to pick the 4 best teams. It's a gatekeep. Why do you think they put Ohio State in 2014 instead of TCU or Baylor? I mean, you probably could have made the argument that Ohio State was a better team there's arguments to be made that Ohio State was better, but if they were actually using the eye test, that TCU team was clearly one of the top 4 teams. Yeah, Cincy has to blow out Tulsa. They do. And it's a road game, so. But like I said, you got to leave no doubt. Like, even in 2010, we didn't blow every team out. We only beat San Diego State by 5, but that was a weird game. We were up by 27, and it was senior day, so our coaches started to put in the seniors. Not me. They didn't put me in. We didn't get to that point, but they started to empty the bench a little bit and empty the bench too soon. San Diego State scored 21 unanswered points, and we had to put our starters back in and recover an onside kick to win. So it's not like it was a start to finish like battle. No, we were blowing them out, and we just emptied the bench too early. But every other Mountain West team we beat by at least 4 touchdowns. So yeah, you got to leave no doubt. And the problem with Cincinnati is they don't have the non-conference measuring stick as what to hang their hat on. Like Boise State, for example, like they would beat the big out-of-conference teams in non-conference, which would be able to cancel out if they had a close game, close call. All right, guys, it's been almost 3 hours. Well, like I only intend these videos to be like 30 minutes, and then I just keep going on and on and on. You guys give me a lot of content, though, in the chat. Like, it's kind of like having callers for a talk show. It would be hard for a talk show to be able to go as long as they do without callers. So, what do I think about college athletes getting paid? I do not think they should be paid. They already get plenty. That's one of the lies out there, is that college athletes are like starving students that get no help. That's bullcrap. If you're a college athlete on scholarship that is hungry, it is your fault and your fault alone, because if you live on campus, you get a meal plan, you get a roof over your head, you get everything you need. You're not going to go hungry. If you choose to live off campus, you get a check. If you're a scholarship player, you get a check that is every month. That is the amount of what room and board and a meal plan would cost at the school you go to. So at least a couple $1,000s, if not more. And a lot of people, if they live off campus, have roommates and everything, so you're not going to have the highest living expenses. So if you are a starving college scholarship athlete, you have no one to blame but yourself. And I lived with scholarship athletes in an apartment. I lived with my scholarship teammates, and they would come knocking on my door, asking for money. You know why? I'm not calling these people out by name because they're great people, but not even great people don't make the best decisions when they're in college, because they spent their money on Xboxes and TVs and video games and strip clubs and all kinds of stupid stuff instead of spending money on stuff to live on. And not only did scholarship players get a check, but We also got per diem money, which is like money to spend on food and stuff on game days and holidays and weekends and days we had to be on campus when other people didn't have to be on campus. We got travel checks for Thanksgiving and Christmas. We got tons of free clothes. We got clothing allowances. Even walk-ons like me got this. When we went to bowl games, we got like a certain amount of money just called per diem for spending money. So we got plenty of help. Even a walk-on like me who wasn't on scholarship. So if you are a starving college student that's not... No, I don't think college athletes deserve to be paid. They're already getting paid in the form of scholarship. Did you hear me earlier in the stream? I had to work 2 jobs for 7 or 8 years to pay off my student loans. I would have loved to have been on scholarship and not have to do that. I would have loved to have been on scholarship. So the notion that these guys are not getting paid is silly. That's just where I fall in the argument, though. I agree, Connor. I wish the college football playoff was automatic bids. OnlyFans. Don't get me started on OnlyFans. I'm tired of seeing people on Twitter that I follow. I don't follow many people on Twitter because it's like I don't want my feed to be cluttered up with stuff I don't want to see. But I follow a lot of my old college teammates on there, and they like people who have OnlyFans page. So I see that on my Twitter feed. So and so liked this post, and it's a Instagram hoe pimping her OnlyFans page. Why would anyone pay money for an OnlyFans? It's called simping. A simp is someone who thinks that if they shower a woman with affection and resources, that they'll get affection and sex in return. That's not how it works. What did I talk about earlier in the video? The more invested you are in a woman, the more desperate you become. She senses that. She will become less attracted to you. If she knows that you are too invested in her, it will be a turnoff. And so by subscribing to an OnlyFans page or showering a woman with resources, money, gifts, whatever, you're just going to make her like you less because it just shows that you're desperate, and women are turned off to desperation. They find thirstiness and neediness, and they find it unattractive. Ultimate simp behavior is OnlyFans. Disgusts me. All right, guys, it's been almost 3 hours. My voice is starting to hurt. I'm going to call it a day, but yeah, I had a lot of fun. I don't know when the next stream is going to be, but probably one updating the progress of my college basketball stuff. I think the target I'm looking for is like every team to get, or not every team, because some teams aren't even going to play any non-conference games, but for the most part, once teams have like 5 or 6 games under the belt, I'll start including them in my model, do a few dry runs, and then take it from there. Predict pace in college basketball, Ben Andrews. I've had this in one of my videos. I don't know which one. I think it's in the Analyzing Sports with Excel series. But predicting pace in college basketball, it's easy to predict. It's easy to predict pace, and it's easy to calculate like a season unadjusted raw pace, but adjusting pace is the hard part. That takes a little bit of legwork, and it still confuses me to this day. Predicting pace in college basketball, though, here's how you'd predict pace. You take the average season pace of each team. So, for example, say Virginia has an average pace of 60 on the season, and Duke has an average pace of 70 on the season. You subtract those numbers from the national average. Say the national average pace is 65. So Virginia is -5, Duke is +5. You combine those two numbers together, which is 0, and you add that onto the national average pace of 65, and that is the expected pace for the game, 65. That's how you predict pace in college basketball. It's actually that simple, but adjusting for pace is a lot more complex, and it's too complex for a stream like this. I think I talked about it in my Analyzing Sports with Excel series, though. But if not, I can always maybe do a video on it one day. Yep. I might do a stream on Saturday or Sunday for college basketball. But yeah, this is how I eat. All right, guys, I'm calling it a night. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.